Ash covered the sky and everything around was dead quiet. The battlefield felt heavy, like all the old stories had finally ended here. The warrior was the only one left, standing in the middle of wrecked history. Everyone used to be against him, but now he was just walking through the aftermath, seeing the result of a war that wiped out legends. Old flags from different clans were trashed, their designs barely holding on, just like the world they came from. But his story wasn't over. People finally saw the real reason he made it. He didn't survive because someone spared him, but because he was just built different. This was the story of a guy who went up against everything. Far off, a guy stepped up and grabbed a sword from someone who'd already lost. Right in front of him, 3 big names in martial arts just stood there, Abbott, Mount's boss, and clan's leader. Didn't waste any time. He called out that the guy was clearly gassed and now was their shot to finish him. He stared them down, his eyes intense, making it clear they were the last ones left. Jin Xian stepped up, said, and let everyone know it was time to get ready. Out of nowhere, the guy showed up right in front of him and went straight for him. Jin just managed to dodge and instantly pulled back. He twirled his staff and started yelling, throwing out all kinds of insults at the lone guy, calling him a demonic god and a fiend, right before jumping into action. He pulled off the move called the Great Buddha Palm and sent a blast of chi straight at the guy standing alone. That guy, who everyone called the demonic god, got ready, locking in for whatever was coming his way. Right when it was about to hit, he jumped way up, dodging the whole thing. Now he was right over, getting set to land his hit. He dropped down with his sword locked in on the abbot, stepped up with his staff, taking the hit so hard it made him grunt, and even sent rocks flying everywhere. He was barely keeping the attack back, clearly stressed out, and he called out to the rest of the group, wondering why they weren't jumping in. He needed backup now more than ever. When he called out and didn't waste a second, they sprinted straight at the demonic god and jumped in, breaking up the attack on the abbot right away. After getting through, both of them just stopped in midair, not moving any closer. Both of them jumped in at the same time, showing off their moves together. Went all out with his Plum Blossom Flash at the same time, dropped his 10,000 Thunders return move. Both of them just locked in and called out for the demonic god to go down. Their attacks landed straight on the demonic god's right shoulder. Blood poured out from his mouth and he let out a raw yell. The pain hit him hard, coming from somewhere behind. Twirled his staff and went for another hit. People started yelling, calling out for the demonic god to come back to life right there in paradise. The demonic god jumped up again, dodging the hit like it was nothing. Even after taking on attacks from both the Mount sect leader and the clan boss, his speed stayed insane. Jin Qian just stood there, completely stunned, barely able to catch his breath. The demonic gods twisted around in the air and started to vanish. He shot up crazy fast, heading straight for. Just like that, the abbot dropped to the ground, his head gone. The demonic god held up his head, his spine dangling like it was nothing, then looked at the last 2 guys left. He grinned at them like he was just getting started, and just stood there totally stunned. They couldn't believe what they were seeing. Dude was on a whole different level. The demonic god rushed straight at them, not holding back at all. Jumped back right away but just stood there frozen. Tried to warn him to move but didn't react fast enough. Didn't flinch when the attack came at him. He just raised his sword and shut it down, locked in and ready for whatever was next. The demonic god moved forward, smiling like he already owned the place. Meanwhile, stood there by himself, ready for whatever came next. He'd basically turned the Central Plains into a total all by himself. To take him down, the top fighters from all 9 big sects pulled up together. He was up against the guy everyone called the strongest in the world. The alliance was hanging by a thread, barely holding on before everything went downhill. And went at it, swords clashing fast. Just grinned, glancing at the old man to see if he'd set up the trap like they planned. Let everyone know he was set. He stood at grave and kicked off his move, Endless Plum Blossom Rain. The Plum Blossom attack came rushing at him, fast and impossible to ignore. Held onto his sword with both hands and hit the ground with a quick roll. He remembered something from before and told himself he still had to wait. He knew this wasn't the end for him. Gripping his sword, he got ready to keep fighting. He pulled off the sword art, 5th form Black Dragon Demon Slaying Slash. His move cut straight through the Plum Blossom assault and didn't slow down, smashing right into his target. All eyes were on when he suddenly let out a scream. Blood shot out everywhere and he dropped right there, gone in a second. Before could even process what just happened, he got hit from behind out of nowhere. Just went all in, unleashing his move called Sovereign without hindrance. Took the hit straight on, barely having time to react. The pain kicked in right away and he clenched his jaw, thinking how really didn't hold back. Dude seriously messed him up. But then another memory popped up in his head. He spotted coming at him and his frown flipped into a wild grin. The hit barely fazed him. It was like getting poked instead of punched. Just froze, totally caught off guard and couldn't believe what just happened. Lifted his sword and went in with a strong strike. A slash so strong it could seriously mess someone up. His left fingers got sliced clean off, fresh cuts marked up his body, and a brutal slash tore right across his face. He jumped back while still in the air, yelling from the pain. He tightened his jaw, thinking there's no way that messed up guy from the demonic sect was getting away this time. He spun through the air, launching himself off thin air like gravity didn't even matter. Lightning cracked through the air as he bolted straight at. He zipped around so fast it was almost impossible to follow, circling with sparks flying everywhere, and then just stopped right behind him, silent but ready. He charged in, sword out, basically yelling for his opponent to just give up and go down already. Took the hit straight to his back. Decided right then that he was done being stubborn. Tightened his jaw, holding it steady. Another memory suddenly popped into his head. He knew this was where it all stopped. Kept him pinned down with the sword still stuck in him, clearly thrown off and not sure what was going on. Suddenly let out a wild scream, blood pouring out of his mouth. He was done. This was it. He was ending the whole cursed thing right there. He took his own sword and shoved it straight into his chest, the blade cutting right through him. Was looking pretty cool too. Screamed as pain shot through him. Pulled the sword out fast, then turned around in one smooth move. He grabbed it tight with both hands, not letting go. He swung so hard that his head just came right off, no hesitation. Nam's head went flying, and in that split second his mind just froze. He couldn't wrap his head around how it was still up and moving after getting his heart stabbed. He started to wonder if he really just broke past what normal people could do. He started wondering if this was really the demonic god standing in front of him. Nam was gone just like that. The sun started coming up. The 9 biggest sects were completely wiped out. Standing alone in the middle of the battlefield, it was just left, still on his feet. He dropped his sword down and started quietly saying names under his breath. Yum looked at Ah and Young Ah, wanting to know if they thought this was finally enough. Suddenly his brain just replayed this old memory. Some kids were all teaming up against one boy, yelling at him because they thought he was acting too full of himself. Out of nowhere, a grown guy reached out and snatched the wild kid from behind. The man picked him up while the kid started kicking and swinging his fists, trying to break free. The guy tried to figure out why the kid was freaking out on him. Seeing all this play out, started thinking if he was getting one of those moments where your life flashes in your head. He hadn't seen his master's young face in what felt like forever. Thinking back, that spot was where everything started for him, just fighting every day, trying to make it through and level up in the martial world. He was always on the move, just him and his sword. No real home to chill at, never sticking around anywhere for long. Every day, someone didn't make it. That was just how things worked if you wanted to keep going. He was stuck in this loop, where people just kept getting taken out for no real reason. He started wondering if life even mattered, and if everything just slipped away this fast. His memories kept rolling, stopping when he saw a woman in his mind. She used to say she got what he was going through since she was always butting heads with people at the market herself. In this world, if you didn't treat everyone like competition, you'd get eaten alive. Taking care of her younger siblings, especially when they begged for sweet snacks, was tough too. Still, those moments were what mattered most to her. After her parents were gone and she just broke down, they stepped up and gave her something to hold on to again. She pushed to find his own purpose too, even giving him the nickname Great Hero. Out of nowhere, the memory jumped, and he watched himself just break down and start crying. He sat there staring at the woman and her little brother and sister. They were gone, swords still stuck in them. Deep down, he just wanted to be with her and live a normal life. She was the reason he kept going, even though all he'd ever known was fighting and taking lives. Now he picked up his sword again, but this time it was all about revenge. He'd been wandering for so long, never really belonging anywhere. He used to sit around thinking about what he was really meant to do with his life. He snapped out of it and got his head back in the game. He dropped his head and started crying after a bit. He remembered how the reason for everything had always been right in front of him. For 15 years, he'd been on his own, leaving chaos behind wherever he went. His sword was worn out and scars covered him everywhere, but he pushed through to the end and used up every last bit of strength to get his revenge. As the sun started to rise, he finally dropped his sword. Right in front of him was the demonic god defeated. The lights cut out completely. Out of nowhere, a voice just blasted through the place, way louder than anyone expected. It was clear someone inside wasn't happy about people showing up or throwing money around for martial arts secrets. Just sat there thinking about how loud it all was, kind of wishing it would chill out. He opened his eyes and realized he probably ended up in hell after all. Right in front of him, there was a woman and a younger guy, both backed up by a crew of martial artists. The woman explained that since the young guy's brother got taken out by some accident and couldn't carry on the family's martial arts, they wanted her own son to step in and take over the clan's hidden techniques. Looked around, trying to figure out what was going on, and started to question if this place was really supposed to be hell. He snapped to attention when the guy next to him suddenly yelled that this wasn't okay at all. The dude's older brother was still around, so there was no way the family's martial arts should be passed down through their mom's side. The girl next to him pointed out that the boy wasn't even related by blood through their mom. So even if the brother couldn't pick up the family techniques, their grandfather's legacy still stayed with the Yum family. Saw it and his eyes went wide. He noticed the kids looked just like the girl's younger siblings from back in the day. He couldn't believe it. His mind started racing, trying to figure out who they were. The guy standing up front just flashed a grin and moved in closer. He said things weren't going to wrap up anytime soon and mentioned he had some kind of offer for them. Looked over at the guy, not really getting what he was talking about, and wondered what kind of proposal he was even bringing up. The guy reached out his hand, making his move. He said he'd heard those two kids were basically broke, barely scraping by for food. He was down to bet cash on it. Was ready to bet everything his clan had built up over generations. The plan was simple. They'd throw down, winner takes everything, no holding back. He wanted to see if anyone else was down for it. The guy next to got all flustered, trying to point out that his brother wasn't even able to start training because he'd lost it. Meanwhile, the girl just shook her head, clearly not buying it and saying there's no way they'd get fooled by something that obvious. Suddenly broke the silence, making that classic annoyed sound with his tongue. He pretty much let everyone know their talking was getting on his nerves. He turned around, wanting to know who this Wa guy even was. The two kids next to him just went quiet real quick after that. Stepped up and told everyone who he was. He said he was the demonic god, making sure everyone knew the name. The guy in front just stared at him, looking confused and not really getting what was going on. Kept his cool, told him his name, and let him know that people used to call him the demonic god. He rolled his eyes at the title, thinking it sounded lame and played out. Honestly, he joked to himself, he could just say he's the king of the underworld and it'd make about as much sense. This guy was second son in the merchant guild, and he definitely carried himself like he owned the place. The guy next to couldn't believe this was happening right now, and the little girl with him just let out a frustrated groan. A woman walked up and pointed out how he was getting crazier every day. She rolled her eyes, messing around with her fan, and pointed out that with an air like that, the clan was basically done for. She said she was only looking out for them because they were family and told them not to take it the wrong way. It was pretty clear her heads up was supposed to help them too. That was the boss running the merchant guild. She tapped her fan against her hand, basically shutting down the conversation. She made it clear that if nobody spoke up, she'd take that as everyone being on board. She turned around and made it clear the whole thing would be wrapped up on the 5th day next month. Glanced back at making sure she caught his drift. He reminded her about their meetup spot, Flying Shadow Pavilion. It was kind of an unspoken rule among martial artists, something you just don't mess with. Everyone knew what breaking that promise meant, especially someone like Demonic God. After that, they both headed out, no looking back. The little girl next to him just watched as they left. He thought it was messed up how they just made all the decisions without even asking him. She looked at him, voice shaky, wanting to know what he was about to do. She kept pushing the point. He'd never actually used a sword for real. Glanced down at them, kind of lost, thinking to himself if he really had never used one before. He tried to get his chi moving, but there was nothing there. He just laughed to himself, realizing he was still trying to act tough even now. Right in the middle of talking, it just hit him and he stopped cold. He couldn't believe it. He literally had zero internal energy left. Frustrated, he crouched down, realizing how weak this body was, like his bones might snap if he tried to pick up any weapon. The whole situation just left him stunned at how powerless he felt. Out of nowhere, the little girl yelled at him to cut it out. He stopped for a sec and just looked at her. She started tearing up, hoping he'd snap out of it. She knew that with everything being said, nobody would just chill unless they seriously didn't get it. The guy next to her shot her a glare, clearly annoyed, and told her off, saying she needed to say sorry right away for disrespecting her older brother. She just shook her head in. He started bawling even more, shaking his head and refusing to give in. She suddenly yelled, blaming him for their parents' deaths. Just froze. The girl broke free and took off, leaving the boy standing there by himself. He looked worn out as he let them know their brother probably wouldn't remember since stuff like this happened a lot. He just wanted everyone to chill about it. Quietly tried to wrap his head around it, and then the guy dipped out after saying bye. Stood in the courtyard by himself, just zoning out and looking straight ahead. Even the kids acted like he was totally out of it. None of this was adding up. He walked around the estate quiet, just taking it all in. He replayed everything that happened in his head. He remembered clearly taking down the clan leader. There was no doubt in his mind about what he'd done. He could still remember exactly when his heart got stabbed. That pain never really faded from his mind, it just stayed there heavy. He thought back to getting revenge for her and her siblings, thinking he'd finally feel at peace when it was all over. He caught his reflection by accident, and the face looking back wasn't his at all. His legs almost gave out and he grabbed his head like he couldn't handle it. None of this made sense if that was really the case. He started wondering who those kids were, the ones who looked just like an A. Everyone started calling him crazy, but honestly he just thought that was nonsense. Out of nowhere, a guy sprinted right at him, yelling for the young master like it was an emergency. Got up and the guy immediately called him out for going outside when he was still looking super weak. He made it clear he'd actually been stressing about him. Wondered who this guy was, noticing right away that the man definitely recognized him. At first first, the guy looked totally lost, but then you could tell something clicked. He reached out and grabbed Sarm, letting out a tired sigh like he'd seen this sort of chaos before. Ready to clear things up, he started talking about who he was. He said his name was and that he worked for the clan. Then he got into what happened next. Was seriously talented, so a bunch of respected sects tried to get him on their squad. By the time he was 23, everyone knew him as the next in line for his clan. Let out a tired sigh, thinking about how he'd already explained this whole thing 6,205 times. Pushed his hand off and acted like he couldn't care less. He threw out a sarcastic comment, wondering why his ended up messed up if he was supposed to be so impressive. People started calling him crazy, and that's just how everyone saw him from then on. Paused for a second, not really sure if he should bring up what went down 17 years ago. He started remembering a time when two kids faced off in a duel. It all went down on this open field while the clan elders weren't around. The two boys gave a quick bow to each other, agreeing to fight without using any special powers just to keep things fair. The boys in the story were who was 6 and who was 9. Was serious about throwing down a challenge and not one to back down, just nodded and went over the family rules again. They started throwing punches at each other. Just kept going, not really caring about what might happen next. He was still telling the story, even though nobody really knew who had started the whole thing. When he first brought it up, the two young masters challenged each other to duel. Nobody was around. Moved quick, dodging attacks while noticing how blocked every single hit. He couldn't help but be impressed. Speed was just on another level. Stopped right in the middle of the fight. He gave some props, honestly impressed by what could do. Before could even react, powered up and smashed his fist down using all his energy. He rushed right at him, grinning wild like he was ready for anything, thinking the other guy was clueless. Got sent flying, landing hard. Blood started dripping from his nose. Still out of it, he wondered why went all out with his energy after they agreed not to, and how even knew about the 7 wounds fist. Just shrugged, acting like it was no big deal. He had this smug look, basically saying stuff like taking people out and running experiments was second nature to him. He bragged about already trying that move out on another disciple. He was hanging by a thread, barely holding on. He did it on purpose, not holding back at all. He went in for another hit. Finished telling the whole story. Now stuck in his body, figured out this was probably why everyone thought he was crazy. The 7 wounds fist messed him up for good. He thought back to what went down with earlier, and it honestly got him heated. Messing someone up that badly, leaving them totally wrecked, then acting like you did nothing wrong and daring them to face you again. Yeah, that was just messed up. He wanted to know from what happened to the guy who caused all the trouble. Told everyone that Stad, who used to run the clan, was the one in charge of everything back then. Was his nephew and also the next in line for one of the top 10 merchant guilds in the Central Plains. Because of that, he didn't really get punished, just caught a tough lecture and that was it. Couldn't help but let out a bitter smirk to himself, thinking how weak his family was for letting stuff slide like this. He wanted to know what was going on with his parents. Dropped his head. He got taken over to the ancestral hall once they got there. Standing at the altar, he broke down how just kept getting worse, losing it more and more as time went on. His dad had to borrow a bunch of money just to pay for the treatment. 9 years back, his mom got really sick, and after a while she passed away. 3 years later, he was drowning in debt and just feeling hopeless. His dad was gone too, remembered that night when everyone gathered for the family ceremony. The hallway was filled with people talking behind his back. Some of the clan's main guys called him the kid who took out his own parents, saying he brought nothing but trouble and would probably be the reason the clan falls apart. Kept talking, laying it all out. Now the clan was pretty much just left with a pile of debts, a couple of die-hard followers, and maybe 12 guys still ready to fight. He also pointed out the 2 younger siblings who made it through everything, and thought back to when got mad earlier. She thought to herself that with her family falling apart because of sickness, it made sense why she lost it like that. That night was chilling in his room. He spent hours just buried in books, totally locked in. He found out from those guys that once the fight with the 9 big sects was over, demonic god was really gone, and just like that, 30 years had already gone by. Everything around him just felt way too legit to be some random dream. He realized he was now in the body of the Wa clan's heir. He scrolled through the drawings and notes his siblings made, checking out all the get well messages they left for him. He noticed they acted just like the kids he used to hang out with back in the day, all friendly and chill. He just kind of accepted that from now on he had to roll with being in that. He started thinking maybe it was time to do something for the kids who got treated unfairly. The biggest problem standing in his way was the Wa Merchant Guild. They were the ones who messed him up and trashed his whole clan. He saw that his fight with was set for the 5th day of next month. Before all that, he needed to lock in some followers. He realized he'd have to go all the way back to square one with martial cultivation, which honestly kind of sucked. He sat there not making a sound, and his mind drifted back to his first martial arts lesson from his past life. Back then, even just catching his breath felt impossible. He started working on his breathing, taking it slow and steady. He realized this body could just sense chi automatically, no training or weird rituals needed. When he shut his eyes, energy just started moving through him. Kai started building up fast right at his core. Things started getting intense, and it all just took over. The room kept getting brighter, lighting up more and more until a loud boom blasted through the whole estate, making everything shake. Servants hurried into his room. He walked in and saw him passed out on the floor. One guy freaked out and rushed over to check on him. At first, everyone thought he was gone. He checked his pulse again and realized it was way stronger than before. He couldn't believe it. The young master was somehow getting healthier, and it seriously threw him off. Out of nowhere, shot his hand up and caught the guy's finger. He woke up grumbling about how just trying to make it hurt way too much. The man looked at him, totally lost about what he was talking about. Really wanted to find out what kind of body he had, and if it was anything special. The guy just shrugged and said he'd heard someone from call it the Heavenly Martial Constitution. Froze for a second, thinking about what he just heard. The Heavenly Martial Constitution, it sounded wild, like something out of a legend. The guy just laughed, calling it a body picked by the heavens so someone could always stay on track and do the right thing. Looked like he was about to snap, but suddenly he started coughing up blood hard. Right away he got it. His body just couldn't handle any of that demonic stuff. For someone built like him, trying to mess with demonic powers would wreck him, probably even get him killed. He started thinking about those other insane powers, like the ones with unstoppable strength, crazy fire abilities, or the ones who just never seem to age. Meanwhile, was right there next to him, freaking out and trying everything to keep him awake, waving his hands like his life depended on it. Was annoyed just thinking how unlucky he was. With the duel coming up next month and his health in a rough spot, things were not looking good for him. He gritted his teeth and looked over at the old guys standing close by, trying to figure out who they were. Pointed out that those two were Chief Steward Shin and Elder Joe. Squinted at the group, catching how they kept their faces stone cold while talking among themselves about how he was getting worse every day, maybe even hinting it was time to get ready for the worst. His hand shook as he reached out to Elder Joe, anger running wild in his head, but then he suddenly coughed up more blood. Yelled out, panicking, desperate for to hang on. In the quiet after, Smine just refused to give up. He was determined, no way was he letting it end here. A couple days later, over at the clan's place, rain was coming down hard, flooding the place with noise. His voice carried through the hall, calling out that the young master had been out cold for 3 days straight. Stuck close behind, watching as he marched toward the wall, still shouting, trying to make sure he was okay. Just kept moving, thinking it was wild that he'd been knocked out for 3 whole days. He got annoyed at how weak his body felt, worried he might not even make it to the fight. He stopped for a second, all wrapped up in bandages from head to toe, and told to chill out because all that yelling was making him look weak. But honestly, he was more focused on the fact that if he was about to throw down, he'd need a sword first. Thunder rumbled through the courtyard, glanced over at, pointed straight at him, and sent him off to grab some swords, no time to mess around. Spoke up, but he was clearly unsure. They had bigger problems to deal with, like where their next meal was coming from. Buying a sword just didn't make sense right now since they barely had any cash at all. Still pointing and not letting it go pushed him, wanting to know if the family was seriously out of money. Laid it out, he and the others were already taking loans from the syndicate. Their interest rates were insane, so now their debt had gotten way out of hand. Didn't say anything when thunder crashed above. He just looked up, thinking about how things had really gone downhill for his family. Before anything else, they seriously had to figure out their money situation. He leaned in right next to, rested his elbow on shoulder, and just gave this casual smirk, like adding on more debt didn't even faze him. To him, it was whatever. What's a little more when you're already deep in? Started freaking out, wondering if he was actually about to borrow money again. Just brushed off what he was saying and told him to leave a note for the 2 elders, letting them know he was heading out for a walk. Time passed. Elder Dude checked out the letter and instantly got heated, questioning if young master seriously went back to the loan syndicate again. Elder Joe stood next to him and shrugged it off, thinking it was nothing major. He figured the syndicate would probably just kick him out, but Dude wasn't buying it. He thought the real trouble would start if messed with the loan syndicate, because then all those smaller wild groups could jump in too. Outside the only syndicate building, and pulled up, stopping right in front of the huge guards blocking the door. Shot the guy a quick smirk, then told him to go let his boss know that someone from the clan wanted a word. The guard glanced down at them and basically brushed them off, telling them to keep it down if they were just there to gamble and not to mess around making noise. Glanced up, clearly not having it, and basically challenged to get someone else if he couldn't handle the message. Not backing down, fired back and called him out. Meanwhile, standing nearby, kept jumping in, trying to calm things down. He fumbled over his words, explaining that their young master wasn't feeling great and asking the guard not to get worked up about it. Kept his eyes locked on, clearly annoyed, and wanted to know what was staring at. Out of nowhere, the sharp clink of a coin flipping through the air broke up the tense vibe in the room. Out of nowhere, another guy showed up right between in, asking what was happening. Took a step back, not really sure what to expect. Called the new guy his brother and let him know wanted to meet their leader. Then tried to figure out if this new dude was actually the boss around here. The man casually flipped another coin, just messing around, and wanted to know why was there to meet the boss. Without even hesitating, said he was there to borrow more cash. The guy snatched snatched the coin right out of the air, eyes locking straight on. That was Ma Bo, the right-hand man running things for the lone crew. He pointed out that if things were really like that, meeting the leader wasn't even necessary. He opened the door and waved them in. After that, things moved on. They ended up in this underground room under the building, crossing this shaky wooden bridge that hung over a huge cave. Right next to leaned in and said they should probably just bail. He couldn't shake off this bad vibe, just brushed him off, acting like they hadn't traveled forever to get here and calling him out for freaking out now. When they stepped into a small spot inside the cave, started freaking out a bit more. He remembered something wild from a few days back. A random old lady at the tea house in the market told him she'd seen 2 syndicate assassins going after one guy. Out of nowhere, the guy got his chest cut open just like that. He mentioned that those assassins were supposed to be insane fighters, totally locked in with the twin martial arts style. Ruinous force, heaven technique. Glanced over, clearly confused about what that even meant. Said the name again but way quieter this time. Just stared, not really sure what he was supposed to do with that information. Right then, another coin hit the cave floor, echoing loud and shutting down their talk instantly. Up front, Ma Bo, who'd been out in front, started laughing when he noticed the servant caught on faster than expected. But by then, going back wasn't even an option anymore. The guys from the syndicate suddenly showed up right behind and everyone grabbed their swords ready to go. Ma snatched the coin right out of the air and just signaled to start. Wondered if Ma had planned this from the start. Ma Bo turned around with a smirk, pretty much saying there's no way anyone could just walk up and take out the clan's oldest son, especially out in the open with a bunch of people around. He called out, saying he couldn't even cover the main loan, not to mention the extra charges, and made it clear he wasn't about to let him drain the syndicate like his parents did. Next two dropped down hard, knees hitting the ground. He kept bowing over and over, basically begging for them to let the young master live. Just shot Ma a look and set him straight, making it clear he never had parents. The cavern went quiet for a second, stopped for a second, thinking he'd just heard Ma say something that reminded him of his past life. Right then, a guy from the syndicate behind them spoke up and said he was about to get started. Ma gave the signal, telling his crew to just mess up a bit, nothing wild. The guys got hyped and jumped right in, ready to do what he said. One of them jumped in and snatched, picking him up off the ground like it was nothing. He grabbed him and started spinning him around, yelling that this cocky kid wasn't making it out alive. He was right in the middle of his spin. Moved around a bit. He grabbed the guy's arm and with one quick move twisted it until it broke. The man yelled out, completely losing it from the pain as he hit the ground hard, calling out how the guy he was fighting moved way quicker than he looked. After getting up, checked out his opponent and thought it was wild how someone that huge could actually be that gentle. He stared at his hands, thinking about how weak his body had gotten. Trying to fight head-on just wouldn't cut it anymore, so using a different approach actually worked out way better for him. Ma stood behind everyone, flipping another coin and clearly getting annoyed. He wanted them to hurry up and get it over with. One of the syndicate guys suddenly rushed in. He had his sword in hand. He kept swinging at over and over, not letting up for a second. He kept dodging every hit, moving quick and staying one step ahead. The guy trying to land a punch was getting annoyed, thinking he was impossible to catch. Kept dodging, realizing he couldn't win by just going head to head. He figured his best shot was to rely on his speed and movement skills instead. Right then he just went for it and slammed his forehead right into the guy's face. The dude's nose instantly started bleeding everywhere. He tripped and started falling back and was still trying to get his bearings. Another syndicate guy was right next to him, already going in with his blade. Leaned back, pushed off, and caught himself on his hands. He turned fast, swung his leg, and nailed a spinning kick that launched the guy straight back. The dude slammed right into another syndicate member who was standing behind him. They crashed down together, landing in a messy pile on the floor. Close by. Called out, checking to see if the young master was okay. Dropped down without missing a beat, looking totally unbothered. Just stood there, staring like he couldn't believe what he'd seen. He wanted to know where picked up moves like that. Instead of calling it martial arts, just shrugged it off, saying it was stuff he learned while trying to survive on the streets. That threw off, he honestly couldn't remember a time when the young master was ever out there struggling like that. Before they could keep talking, Ma got ready to flip another coin. He gave a nod, showing he respected his moves, but made it clear he wanted to see if could dodge again. He snapped the coin hard, sending it flying straight at. Managed to duck just in time, but some of his hair still got sliced. He stared, stunned, trying to process if that was actually just a coin that flew by. He spun around fast to see what was behind him. He got ready to face Ma Bo right when the deputy leader told everyone else in the syndicate to clear out. The deputy leader said he'd take care of it solo. Stood his ground, saying he just wanted to talk to whoever was in charge. He couldn't get why that seemed so hard for everyone. Ma pulled out his sword and basically said the leader was just someone you could walk up to whenever you wanted. After that, he told to bounce. Ma Bo didn't waste a second. He just charged straight in, his blade ready. Didn't even flinch. He just grabbed some chopsticks and stopped the hit like it was nothing. Just froze, staring at his chopsticks like he couldn't believe what he was seeing. Knocked the sword away using his utensil, realizing he'd only brought them to stand in for a sword, but they were actually coming in clutch. He started blocking Ma Bo's sword swings using just his chopsticks, moving quick and steady like he'd done it 100 times before. He watched how the deputy leader moved, paying close attention to every move. It hit him that Ma was known for using fighting styles nobody really knew about, just like the rumors said. He noticed a gap up ahead. Instantly, his mind locked onto it. He moved fast and jammed a chopstick right into Ma Bo's hand, the one holding the sword. Ma Bo let out a pained sound while pulled the chopstick back out. Ma Bo's mind was spinning. The guy didn't just stop a sword with chopsticks. He actually used that split second to launch a counterattack. Lost it and swung his blade sideways, aiming right at, barely dodged by leaning his head back at the last second. Ma was annoyed, thinking dodged around like some sneaky rat. Didn't back down, pretty much letting Ma know that messing with chopsticks was a bad idea. He'd regret it soon enough. He started twirling a bunch of chopsticks in each hand, charging them up with his own energy. They all launched their attacks straight at Ma and every hit landed. He bit down hard, trying not to yell, his mind racing. He couldn't believe it. He thought was supposed to be done for, no more internal power left. So how did get this strong again? He went all out swinging his sword like crazy but just kept slipping past every attack like it was nothing. Ma's thoughts were spinning. Was this really the same from the clan? Out of nowhere, caught another chance and jabbed Ma with a chopstick again. Then he started talking, saying he heard Ma's family was deep in debt, so he showed up to see what kind of people they were. But honestly, watching them try to pull off a weak shakedown was just straight up disappointing. He went for it again, landing another sharp hit right into Ma Bo's elbow. Didn't waste any time. After a couple more moves, he jumped way up, higher than anyone expected. He said he was about to give a real lesson in martial arts since always acted like it was nothing. Down below, just looked up, totally lost. He seriously couldn't remember ever trashing their moves. Ma lost it, yelling as his sword got covered in swirling kai. He was totally done messing around and just went all in, pulling out his secret move. He dropped down from above, his blade locked on like he was ready to end it all. It was like watching someone go full send, no hesitation, just deadly focus. Down below, just stood there not moving at all. He glanced up totally unfazed and let them know straight up who was really messing around. Went in for the hit but just slid out of the way like it was nothing. That move threw off big time. He actually dodged it off to the side, tightened his fist and started throwing quick punches one after another. Ma froze, totally freaked out. He started wondering who this guy really was, and if he'd been holding back some insane skills the whole time. Threw a hard punch right into Ma's stomach. Ma doubled over, clutching his stomach, blood dripping out of his mouth. He could barely catch his breath, glaring at the guy in front of him, probably wondering what was going to happen next, and if this dude even had a plan for what came after all this. Out of nowhere, that classic coin toss sound bounced around the cave. Right after, spoke up. He made it clear he wasn't there to mess around with threats, just straight up told them that saying the right things could keep them alive longer. He snatched the coin out of the air, shot Ma Bo a cold grin, and went right back to asking for more cash. Upstairs in the only syndicate building around, chilled with a bunch of lone sharks, kicking back and taking a drag from a wooden pipe packed with weed. He tilted his head back and let the smoke out slow, realizing it had been ages since he'd actually enjoyed himself like this. Sitting right next to him, suddenly reached over and grabbed the wooden pipe out of his hand. He slammed it down on the table, saying it was bad for him. Wah looked at the weed all over the place and just thought it was a waste. Ma Bo sat across from him, talking while the other syndicate guys, still bruised from the cave, knelt down, heads low. He stumbled over his words, trying to figure out what Mu Jin wanted to know. Started talking, wondering why guys who never let go of a single coin would back up a clan when they had nothing to gain. Something felt off, and he couldn't shake the thought that they were planning something shady. Looked down, saying had it all wrong, and there was no way he meant anything shady. Just gave him that look, eyebrow up, like he could practically hear overthinking all the way from the other side of the room. He grabbed a cup full of dice and started shaking it, eyes locked on. He told him straight up to watch his next move. If about 30 dice ended up in his throat, speaking would be impossible no matter what. A few seconds went by without anyone saying anything. Finally owned up, admitting they only did it because the Merchant Guild told them to. Just nodded, not surprised at all. He'd already guessed those guys were behind it. He wanted the details though, so he pressed for what kind of deal went down. Froze up, struggling to get any words out. Mu Jin leaned in, getting ready for whatever was coming next. He tossed the dice out on the table. With a cold tone, he let Ma Bo know he wasn't some wise monk or a legendary hero. Loyalty, that belonged to his own crew, nobody else. Even if he got wrecked right there and the whole place went up in flames, the Merchant Guild wouldn't care one bit. Shut his eyes for a second and just stood there, not saying anything. After a bit, he finally started talking. He let everyone know there was actually a contract involved. The Merchant Guild told their guys to hand out cash to the clan, basically let them borrow as much as they wanted, but crank up the interest. The plan was to trap the clan in debt so deep it'd be impossible to get out. Once the clan went under, the guild promised a solid reward and said they could take over the clan's land too. Glanced over the contract, realizing the clan's land was basically being used as backup for the deal. He wondered how much borrowing 300 of gold would turn into after a year. Ma broke it down for him. The contract said it'd blow up to around 5,000. Couldn't help but laugh at how wild that was and thought these guys were a joke. He figured it was time to switch gears and get on with whatever was next. He let the contract fall onto the table, not even bothering to slide it over. He locked his eyes on Bo, wanting to know where the minor lawless crew was hiding. Let everyone know he was part of the Four Heavens Alliance, which was basically a squad made up of different sects. The smaller, more wild group had just teamed up with them not too long ago. Thought to himself how the Four Heavens Alliance was honestly just a shady crew. Slid up next to him, getting all curious and dropping a quiet question about when had even met those guys to be talking like that again. Just brushed it off, not really interested in getting into the whole story. He started getting restless, thinking about why the guy who was supposed to grab the cash was taking forever. Looking pretty anxious, told him to hold up for a second. Right then a guy rushed in, holding a small chest in his hands. He dropped the gold on the table and said he brought 300 yang. Right away, Sai's lit up. He popped open the chest, checked out the gold inside, and felt pretty hyped. It was more than he needed, and he was good with that. He got up smirking and let everyone know it was time to bounce. Was still chilling in his seat, glancing up and checking if he was actually about to take it. Just told him to grab it and didn't say anything else. When they stepped outside, the rain was still coming down hard. Outside the Lone Syndicate's building, Wamu Jin looked over at Ma Bo. He pulled out one gold coin and wanted to make sure it got written down in the ledger before the day ended. After handling his stuff with the Merchant Guild, he was good to go. Their main client was done. He was coming back to clear every debt, no shortcuts. He let them know to quit scamming regular people, and if they tried anything dumb again, it'd go south for them real quick. He squeezed the gold coin in his hand until it broke, and that made tense up. Could tell he needed to remember this moment. As they walked off, let out a long sigh and kept moving. He figured it wouldn't be long before he found out who ended up taking the L first, especially that wild young master from the clan. After a while, the rain finally let up, and made their way back to the clan's place. As they reached the front of the ancestral hall, the elders were waiting for them. One of the elders, immediately noticed the blood on his clothes and freaked out a little. Quickly let him know it wasn't his. Wanted answers about what went down at the lone place. Just shrugged it off, saying he went there to get some cash. He pointed out that everyone was struggling and the clan fighters needed real meals, not scraps. If they didn't step up, the others could just dip. Elder got all nervous, stumbling over his words as he tried to figure out if he'd actually taken the cash. He knew for sure that the Lone Syndicate wasn't about to give them any money. Made sure he told them straight up to write it down in their ledger before heading out. He stepped up and put his hand on Elder's shoulder, ready to move things forward. He told him to just make sure his little siblings had enough to eat and something to wear. As he headed out, he tossed a quick, upbeat comment over his shoulder, basically telling him to keep grinding. In the ancestral hall, was hauling this heavy chest packed with gold, but out of nowhere he just dropped to the ground, totally wiped out from the weight. Glanced over at Joe, clearly thrown off by what just happened, kinda like he couldn't believe people could actually be this wild. Joe just watched head off, barely reacting except for a quiet click of his tongue. He wasn't about to say anything, just taking it all in. A while later sparked it up. He stood in front of the candles set up for his parents, the ones he'd never actually met. For a second he just stood there, not really sure what he was supposed to say or even how he was supposed to feel about it. He let them know that money problems weren't really a thing anymore. He wanted everyone to chill and not stress about things anymore. From now on, he promised himself he'd look out for his siblings and everyone at home. He hoped they could finally relax, knowing he had it covered. Hiding out in the corner of the old family hall, Wa kept it quiet, just listening while he talked to the altar. He kept going, letting everyone know he was about to face off against a guy named in a few days, and whoever won would walk away with the clan's secret manual. He just smirked and told them to chill. He had it covered and was ready to break those guys if he had to. The ancestral hall went quiet. The night passed, and by morning, everything started up again. Later that morning, 3 clan warriors showed up and hauled some big wooden cases out from right outside's room. They let the 3 heavy cases hit the ground. Everyone looked wiped out, trying to catch their breath after whatever had them doing. Stood off to the side, throwing out a quick thanks for all the effort. One guy tried to stretch out his back, grumbling about how heavy the stuff was. He swore it almost snapped his spine. Someone else pointed out that at least all the moving was finally done and suggested they chill out with a drink and take a break. Not long after, swung the door open, face lit up, clearly hyped to see them. He started checking out the cases right away. Each one had its weight slapped on the side. One was 30 kilos, another was 48, and the last one hit 66. After he looked them over, he was pretty satisfied. Everything was there and exactly how it was supposed to be. He dropped to one knee and popped open a case. Sitting inside was this huge sword, the kind you see in games but way heavier. Crouched next to him, eyeing the weapon and wondering what he was planning, especially since even the strongest fighters had a tough time hauling those things around. Grabbed the sword and answered back. He grabbed the sword by the handle, ready to go. In his head, he knew the only thing to do now was swing it. He decided to start off easy and picked up the one there, a 30-kilo sword. He went to pick it up, but as soon as he tried, the sword just dropped right back down with a loud thud. Gave him a side-eye, clearly doubting he was actually serious about using something that heavy. just stood there quiet, his hand still tight around the sword on the ground. Deep down, he knew this was coming. He didn't expect the 30-kilogram blade to be impossible to pick up. His body just wouldn't cooperate, which really ticked him off. After a quick breath, he gave it another shot. No way was he backing out now. He finally got the sword up after pushing himself way past his limits. Even though his arms were shaking bad and he looked wiped out, he realized he could still lift it if he used both hands. He glanced over at, telling him to quit staring and just get on with what he was supposed to do. A few minutes passed, and he let go of the sword, pulling it along as he headed back to his room. He told that from now on, he wanted some meat with his food. Just stood there not saying anything while he watched try to handle this massive weapon. He kept his worries to himself, just thinking about how tough it looked for. Inside the room, Wamu Jin grabbed a strip of cloth and strapped the sword tight to his left hand. He raised it up with both hands, thinking about how there were just a couple weeks left before the duel. He was stuck with a body built for heavenly martial arts, but all the stuff his master taught him was straight up demonic, totally clashing. So at this point, the only real path left for him was picking up the sword technique from his master's friend, the 9 Swords of. He didn't waste a second, he just stepped in and whipped that huge blade around the room. He stopped and got into a sword stance, just locking in for a second. With his eyes closed, he knew this was his shot at making it out. There wasn't really another option now. Meanwhile, over at the Wa Merchant Guild, things were heating up. Dubo picked up and started playing. When he heard the news, he thought it was actually pretty sick. Had just taken down the whole lone syndicate. The guy in front gave a quick bow, letting him know the message from the pigeon said the syndicate was basically stuck for the next 2 weeks. Dubo started thinking out loud. Didn't even have a dance, so where did all that strength come from? It just didn't add up. He couldn't help but crack a huge grin, laughing a little as he made it clear he had real skill that never faded. Wa was their top guy, so he figured he should get something cool ready for him. He yanked his bow so hard that the string on his just snapped. He couldn't stop thinking about the duel coming up. He was actually hyped to see what tricks had been keeping under wraps. A couple of days went by and was still out in the courtyard, putting in serious work on his martial arts. He jumped way up, almost like he had springs in his shoes. He stuck the landing on both feet, steady and ready for whatever came next. He thought about it and realized this had to be the legendary heavenly martial body. If it was really something gifted from above, taking a hit like this should be nothing. Later, he ended up in a spare room. He set up a bunch of wooden traps all over his room to practice. He paused for a second, realizing had already set up everything he needed. In his head, he decided this was the moment things kicked off. He pulled off a martial arts move. He went with the solitary 9 swords, starting off with the first move, the declaration form. He kept walking, repeating in his head that he was always ready with his sword, no matter what. Even a mountain like couldn't slow him down. He didn't waste any time and jumped right into the next move. He switched things up, dropping his usual stance. Inside, he doubled down on his decision. He wasn't worried about any weapon, no matter what came his way. He was ready to break them all without flinching. Right after he finished the move, a sudden sharp pain shot through his core. He let out a loud groan, thinking he was basically running on empty already, but he knew he had to push through. He sent the ball flying with a quick kick. The thing bounced hard around the room. He kept his eyes shut and somehow managed to get out of the way as it came flying right at him. He switched things up and pulled off Form 3. He powered up, ready to slice through anything in his way. He cut the ball right down the middle before it got anywhere near him, then let everyone know what was up. No matter how wild the enemy's power gets, this sword just cuts right through it. He stopped for a second. Suddenly pain hit him hard and he couldn't hold it in. His back started aching again. A couple seconds later, he grabbed the rope and gave it a pull. Suddenly a trap went off above him. Bamboo poles dropped straight down, landing right in front of him. He got into position, watched them coming down, and pulled off the next move, Form 4. He powered up, ready to unleash his void-cleaving form. In his head, he knew nothing could go up against this kind of blade. No martial art even stood a chance. All those tricky moves just crumble when someone knows how to deal with them. That's why even a basic sword can cut right through. He went all in with his swing and the bamboo poles snapped clean apart. He shot across the hall and crashed hard into the wall, moving way faster than he expected. When he looked over at where the rope was, he saw he'd totally missed it. He just felt annoyed with himself. He didn't even manage to hit his target once. The last piece of bamboo slammed into the wall and clipped the rope, snapping it clean and setting off a whole new trap. Suddenly, thick wooden logs started dropping from the ceiling, coming straight for him. As soon as he saw what was happening, he got locked in and switched up his stance, ready to go. Without wasting a second, he let loose his next move, Form 5, Army Slaughtering Form. He looked at his sword and knew, no matter how many enemies showed up, they wouldn't stand a chance against him. When a bunch of ants show up, they still can't outdo an elephant. Numbers didn't matter when real power showed up. He cut up all the falling logs super fast, turning them into a bunch of pieces before any of them even touched the ground. He paused to catch his breath, but out of nowhere, a piece he didn't see coming nailed him right on the head. He gritted his teeth, totally fed up, and just called out how unfair everything was. He was so done and ready to move on. He walked up to a bunch of bamboo poles, each one lit up with a candle inside. He He stood in the corner and got ready for his next move, Form 6. He swung his sword hard, slicing through the air like it was cutting still water. Even something as light as a leaf wouldn't stand a chance against that blade. When he finished, he glanced around, kind of surprised at how little had actually shut down. Guess it was time to head outside and see what was next. He stepped outside and walked over to this stone statue. He got ready for his next move, Form 7, 1-point twin earths. In his mind, he thought about how the sword could split the ground, and if it could do that, size basically didn't matter anymore, after he pulled off the move. He looked at the statue and saw it was still standing there, totally untouched. In his head, he wondered why nothing had happened to it. After a bit, he jumped straight into the next move, Form 8, Heaven's Sundering Form. In his head, he hyped himself up, thinking this blade could literally slice through the sky. At that point, he felt unstoppable, like there was nothing on earth he couldn't cut down. As soon as he wrapped up that form, he didn't waste a second and slid right into the last one. He pulled off Form 9, the self-cleaving move. After all that, he finally managed to separate himself from his sword. Now, he didn't see any point in picking up a sword again. After the move ended, he let his weapon fall and just dropped to the ground. He closed his eyes, thinking to himself that in the end it was all just copying. Out of nowhere, an old memory just popped into his head. He remembered talking with his old master from his previous life. In that memory, his master pulled off the last move of the technique, showing him exactly how it's done, and then checked if he had it down. Just a kid sat there on the ground staring up at his master. He said he remembered everything, but honestly wondered if this weak sword style was even worth calling sword art. He thought the explanations were super cringe, like they were just random stuff kids make up to sound impressive. Cutting earth, sky, your own sword, even yourself. Yeah, he thought that was just trying way too hard to seem cool. His master just shook his head, looking a bit fed up, and covered his face with his hand. He basically owned up to it, but then wondered out loud if his friend's whole sword legacy was really supposed to just stop here. He said he couldn't handle it himself. He wanted to step in since his friend was honestly the only swordsman who could actually keep up with him. Was kind of caught off guard. He wondered if that was even doable without some serious inner power. His master explained that his friend probably used a technique that let him move his energy around, not just brute force. The master made it clear this skill had to go to someone who wasn't tied down to any group or sect, since people stuck in those places just never got the full picture. Laughed to himself, thinking that using internal skill like that was pretty lame. Right away, his master smacked him on the forehead for talking down about his friend and started yelling. Let out a sigh, giving up and just going with it. He clearly wasn't in the mood to argue anymore. His master kept breaking it down for him. If he kept swinging this sword style 1,000 times, his body would start to change. Push that to 100,000 and he'd start giving off a sword aura. But if he ever hit 1,000,000 swings, barely anyone in the world could compete with him. His friend said that's how it went down. Started doing the math out loud, saying that even if someone trained 1,000 times every day, it would still take about 3 years to really master it. He asked if his master's friend was actually as strong as him. His master wasn't sure, but he said if they'd ever thrown down for real, only one of them would walk away. Lay flat on his back, staring up at the stars above. His mind started drifting, wondering what kind of guy that swordsman really was. His memory just stopped when he saw knocked out cold on the ground, totally out of it. He started smacking his face over and over, trying to get him up, yelling out and calling him young master. After catching a few slaps, snapped awake, kind of freaking out and asking for a second. Paused, clearly concerned, wanting to make sure it was okay and mentioning he'd been stressing since the young master wouldn't wake up. Still on the floor, told him straight up that if he got hit again, things were gonna get ugly. Pushed himself upright, kind of annoyed that he'd blacked out after only pulling off one sword move. Hitting 1,000 swings a day felt way out of reach right now. He knew he still had a long grind ahead of him. Showed up with some food, setting it down and telling him to eat even though it was already late. Checked out the plate and wanted to know if it was pork. Explained that the young master wanted meat with his meal yesterday, and since it had been ages since they last had any, they should really take their time and enjoy it. Decided he wanted beef from tomorrow on since it was better for building muscle. If cash was tight, he told to grab some from the loan syndicate stash and not to stress the butler out, he'd just borrow more if they ran out. He decided he was sticking to 3 solid meat meals every day until he finally faced off with. While was busy eating, just watched him, kind of surprised at how the young master suddenly picked up those sword moves like it was nothing. He'd never trained in martial arts before. He brought up the time used just a chopstick to take down all the lone syndicate guards like it was nothing. Now there was this wild sword style in the mix. Had already filled the kids in, so telling wasn't a big deal anymore. He started to admit that he wasn't actually the eldest son and was about to drop the real truth that he was the divine demon. But just as he was getting into it, cut him off, not having any of it. Made it clear that if kept talking wild like that, he'd dip without a second thought. He straight up said there was just one thing on his mind. He was scared that one day might forget everything all over again just like last time. He would just switch up completely and vanish, not saying anything to anyone. He wondered if the young master was planning to ditch the Yum clan. Once he was done eating, put his chopsticks down. He promised he'd stick with the clan no matter what, at least until Yum became the top martial family in Sichuan. Other than going after that goal, he honestly didn't have much going on. froze for a second when he heard someone mention the top martial family in Sichuan. He just couldn't believe it was true, but was totally sure and backed it up without hesitation. Couldn't believe how dumb this was and just rolled his eyes. Out of nowhere, reached over and flicked him on the forehead. He sat down on the ground, arms crossed, basically signaling that if the other guy was finished running his mouth, he could just leave. Let out a low grumble and pushed himself up, not really happy about it, but he left the room anyway. Shut his eyes, just lost in his own head for a second. He wondered if being the top dog in Sichuan would fire up too. Time moved on. Over at the clan estate, one of the rooms stayed quiet. Both elders were in the room. Shin handled the tea, pouring it out steady, while Bong stood by the window, eyes fixed outside. Bong brought up the big event coming up in 10 days, the duel between and young master. Shin sat at the table, quietly saying his name under his breath. He picked up his teacup, looking serious, and explained that was definitely planning to take out the young master next. After that, he'd be going after the young emperor's inheritance for sure. Joe thought about it and started considering what would happen if they just dipped before things got out of hand. Shin whipped his head around, eyes locked on the guy, clearly not having it with whatever he just said. Joe stayed focused and pushed forward, knowing he had to be smart about every move. He realized there was no way he could let anything happen to the last two left. Days went by and just kept grinding with his training. One day, after pushing himself way too hard, he was totally out of breath and just let out some annoyed curses, clearly fed up. He glanced at his arm, breathing hard, and realized all that daily sword practice was finally starting to bulk him up. He noticed he could finally swing that 66-kilo iron sword with just one hand, and honestly that felt pretty awesome. He clicked his tongue, realizing there was just a week left before the martial arts competition. From somewhere in the distance, he heard a voice he knew calling out to him. He spun around as soon as he heard the noise. He spotted his younger siblings and just hanging out by the door. He walked up to the group and wanted to know why they were hanging around. He let them know the spot wasn't safe and told them to find somewhere better to chill. Came clean, saying they'd been a little stressed and had been watching him for a while. They figured he was grinding way too hard lately. Looking uneasy, started thinking maybe he was acting like this because of something they talked about earlier. She admitted she'd just been upset before and didn't really mean what she said. Let out a heavy sigh when he saw how worried they were. He just stared at them for a second, thinking to himself without saying a word. Seeing those two, he couldn't help but think back to his old squad. He gave both of them a quick pat on the head, letting them know he wasn't stressed about it at all. Out of nowhere, started copying sword stance with his arm, hyped about how cool it looked. He wanted to know if he was doing it right and said gave off serious martial artist vibes. Wasn't having it though, she pointed out the arms she'd been way. Mujin watched them and couldn't help but smile, seeing how they were trying to do what he did. It took him back to when he was training with his own master. Those memories really hit him out of nowhere. He could clearly picture the time when he was just a kid and his master was giving him a hard time. He heard a voice telling him to breathe out while swinging the sword, holding it as long as he could. The voice also told him to keep it slow and not get ahead of himself. He moved back to where he started, taking a slow, short breath just like he was told. The master wanted him to really get it, no confusion, just full focus. After the memory slipped away, suddenly remembered what nearly slipped his mind. He knew deep down that the real key to the Peerless Nine Swords wasn't just the moves, it was all about the breathing. Thinking back, he realized he'd let his master's lesson slide, and that hit him different. He shot his siblings a confident grin, basically letting them know they didn't need to stress. He was locked in, certain he'd come out on top no matter what. He walked over, nudged them both out of the training spot, and told them to head back to their rooms. Once the door shut behind them, the siblings started cracking up together. Wanted to know if things were gonna work out and just kind of shrugged, not really sure but hoping for the best. Rain just kept dumping on the clan estate as time dragged on. Stayed inside and kept grinding his training. He tried out another move, really focusing on the steps in his head as he went. He kept telling himself to breathe out during the swing, not to rush it, to hold steady, then take a quick, calm breath in when he got back to his spot. He realized the fifth form, Army Slayer, meant burning through every bit of energy he'd built up in one shot. He nailed the move, shot a quick grin, and let everyone know he just pulled it off. Right away, he switched up how he was standing and moved straight into the next move, taking a deep breath as he went. He thought back on movement arts, seeing them as a type of Kai skill that boosted his energy by staying active instead of just sitting around and meditating. He needed to stay active since movement arts were all about staying in motion, not just standing around. People saw them as weak martial arts that nobody really expected much from. He kept reminding himself about the number one rule when it comes to movement. His breathing stayed steady. To keep his body under control, he had to match his breath with every move of the sword. He remembered when just getting the hang of swinging used to be tough. With training like that, the breathing breathing basically held it all together. After grinding through this training over and over, he started thinking back on all the effort he'd put in. After years of chaos, even his was finally starting to pull itself together. As time went on, the sky started turning orange and the sun dipped lower. Was in the kitchen getting some food ready for. Someone called out from behind him. Joe Bong showed up and wanted to know if young master was still grinding through his training. Rushed to get the food ready, threw a cover over it, and couldn't help but notice how much the young master had changed. Back in the day, was always tripping over himself, but now he moved like a totally different guy. Started thinking the Wu Dang doctor's treatment might have actually worked. Joe stopped for a second, hand on his forehead, deep in thought. He seriously wondered if even a Wu Dang doctor could pull off such a crazy recovery in just one shot. He started telling to let him know if anything came up, but was already gone, sprinting off with his food, all hyped up and basically yelling back as he went. Joe Bong just shook his head and made a clicking sound, not really bothered by what was going on. A few seconds later, sprinted straight for the training yard. He let everyone know dinner was ready. When he showed up and took in what was in front of him, he just stopped dead. The whole outer wall was wrecked, basically just a pile of broken bricks now. He couldn't even process what he was seeing, totally thrown off. Just told him straight up that the place was way too cramped. Still confused, tried to figure out what was getting at. Let out a deep breath, sweat running down his face, and pointed out that this spot was way too cramped for any real training. He decided from then on, he'd start hitting up the official training hall. The next day, showed up at the clan's training hall with Rolling in beside him. He walked in and saw the other warriors already there, staring him down with looks that said they couldn't stand him. Spotted the stairs and pointed them out. Walked in and noticed the place was already packed with people. He stepped up and tried to get the warriors' attention, hoping they'd listen. The servant stepped up and let them know the young master wanted to use the main training hall. He went silent when all the warriors stared straight at him. Drove his massive sword straight into the ground. He waved them off, basically letting everyone know he needed the training hall to himself. He wanted to work out alone and needed some space, so he pointed out that there was another hall nearby they could use instead. The warriors clenched their jaws, totally confused about what this zombie-looking guy was even talking about. He might own a sword, but that doesn't make him some kind of fighter. Honestly, he's never even used it in a real fight, hasn't even scratched anyone with it. Wasn't impressed and just looked at them like they were wasting his time. The warriors started to talk back, not caring that he was the young master, but before anyone could really get into it, some guy stepped up and put his left hand out to the side, shutting things down fast. The warrior saw the guy right away and called him out respectfully. Bo-in, the guy leading the Yumwa clan's rain sword squad, lifted his hand to signal everyone. Time to bounce. The young master wanted some space to work on his martial arts. When the warriors were heading out, one of them let out a loud tongue click and shot a look, almost like he thought the guy was off his rocker again. Let out a long breath and called out just as they were about to leave. Bo-in heard's jab, clenched his teeth and shot a glare back, clearly annoyed. Looked up and faced the group, smirking. He pretty much let them know that if they had a problem with him, they should just say it straight to his face instead of trash talking behind his back. He made it clear he thought that kind of move was weak. Just shrugged it off, acting like it was no big deal. Didn't let it slide though, he pushed back, basically asking what his deal was. They both knew at the end of the day they were swordsmen. Leveled his huge sword right at its face, making it clear he wasn't backing down. Just laughed it off, shooting a cocky grin right at young master. Even if everything around him falls apart, nobody's about to pull out their sword and go up against the guy who's set to be the next leader. Didn't just sit there, he fired back, reminding everyone what people always talk about. A dog that actually bites usually stays quiet, but if a dog keeps barking, it's probably just scared. He rested his big sword on his shoulder and shot a wide grin, tossed out an insult, basically calling a coward, and you could see it hit hard. Started shaking, anger building up fast. He tightened his grip on his sword. He pulled out the sword, started messing around with it, then aimed it right at, looking like he was ready for whatever was about to go down. Got his big sword ready, settling into his stance with a grin. Regret wasn't really his thing, he was all in, no second thoughts. And the guys around him got real quiet, all eyes locked on the fight that was about to go down. The two fighters got ready, standing across from each other while the whole training yard went quiet. As soon as he let go of his sheath, he went straight into attack mode. Slammed his big sword into the ground and launched himself up, dodging the attack. While he was still in the air, he ended up right above. He reached out and put his hand right on top of his head. Everyone around couldn't believe what just did. They watched him step up to fight without even grabbing his sword, all trying to figure out what he was planning. Didn't waste a second, he snapped his sword up, aiming straight for her. Was quick though and just leaned to the side, dodging it with smooth moves. stood off to the side, eyes shut tight, totally freaked out, and called out to young master. Kept coming at from below, not letting up for a second. Just kept moving, dodging every swing, staying one step ahead. Started getting heated, wanting to actually face him head on with a sword and quit all the dodging. Was still hanging in the air, barely moving. He just nodded, not showing any emotion, like he already knew what was up. He dropped down next to his massive sword and grabbed the handle. Up at the front, started messing around with his sword, twirling it in his right hand like he was getting ready for something big. It had been 25 years since he first rolled with the clan. He put the clan's problems on, and didn't hold back, making fun of how out of nowhere wanted to get into martial arts. He clenched his jaw, holding it together, charged straight at, putting everything he had into it and yelling at him to back off. Saw it coming and got ready, gripping his huge sword and swinging it to meet the attack. His attack was closing in fast but stayed focused. He locked eyes on his target and pulled off his move, Solitary Nine Swords, second form. He went straight into breaking form, ready for whatever was coming. Their weapons smashed into each other, got launched backward once hit landed. His eyes went wide when he realized this move messed with his energy inside. It actually threw him off way more than he expected. Didn't waste a second, he charged in again, fist tight, basically admitting that had been right about it all. Still, he made it clear things weren't gonna stay the same anymore. He swung hard and caught right in the face. Blood started pouring out of his nose and mouth instantly. Got knocked back hard, sent flying from the hit. He couldn't believe how his eyes, once kind of lost and distant, had totally changed. Now his eyes had that look, like he was seriously ready for anything. He was totally locked in, ready to take on whatever came next. Slammed into the ground, the sound of him hitting the dirt echoing all over the training yard. Nobody moved, the warriors and just froze, all thinking the same thing. Young master really pulled it off. A few seconds later, the warriors sprinted over to where was down. They crowded around him, clearly worried, trying to check if he was okay. Jammed his sword into the dirt, making sure it was solid. Nobody had anything to say about it now. One of the warriors started yelling calling him out for being a coward. Just turned his head, ready to find out what that was all about. The warrior started talking, pointing out how already knew wasn't about to challenge him at full power. But before he could finish, suddenly sat up and told everyone to quiet down. Blood ran from his nose and mouth while he finally gave up. He got up and gave a respectful bow. After everything that happened, he just said he picked up something from the whole thing. Didn't say much, just told him to step aside. On the other hand, yelled out about loyalty, making sure everyone heard him. He signaled to the warriors, telling everyone to chill out and head over to the training area next door. Just stood there watching them head out. He told to head out too. The warriors headed over to the training ground next door. Even though was the young master, one guy thought he was seriously pushing his luck this time. He wondered what made Shial hold back. Shial just stood there. The guy leading the way said straight up he wasn't holding back, he was actually trying to mess up. The dude behind him couldn't believe it, but just shot back that he doesn't look like someone who talks big for no reason. The warrior kind of fumbled his answer, and Shial just decided that, no matter what went down before, everyone could tell their wild young master just scored some insane luck. Was hanging back at the end of the group, thinking about how wild this chance was. He started wondering when ever got an opportunity like this. He paused, glanced up at the sky, and figured that since the young master wasn't the same as before, it was probably all right. The night before the big showdown with the clan finally rolled around. Elder Joe stood by the door inside the old family hall, just watching the night sky. While was at the altar, he started thinking about the duel coming up with the Merchant Guild. He asked Joe how long it had been since they first joined the clan together. Joe kept looking up at the sky and said it had been around 37 years. Just thought, man, that's actually a long stretch of time. He thought back to how things were at the start of the clan, back when Lord was young and nobody could touch him. Everyone knew the Tang clan had no choice but to respect his fighting skills now. Shin let Joe know that both of them promised to give everything, pulled in by how Lord just stood out. Joe called out Shin for going back on his word, but Shin just pushed back, saying it wasn't betrayal. He was convinced they had to keep Lord Yum's bloodline and fighting skills alive no matter what. Joe spun around and walked up to at the altar. He already understood what was going on, so there was no point in trying to explain anything. He remembered they'd been dealing with young master acting wild for 17 straight years. And for all that time, they'd been holding it down for the Yum clan too, sticking together even as things got rough. Honestly, even if they ran into Lord after everything, he wouldn't hold it against them. Right now, Joe just wanted to make sure they were ready to go. Let out a long sigh and said they didn't really have much to pack up, just needed a bit of silver to get themselves set up somewhere new. There were just a few warriors left standing, and only 4 clan tokens were still up for grabs. He waited for a second. He told Joe to go ahead. Joe looked confused and wanted to know why. Shin pointed out that no matter what had happened, was still related to Lord by blood. There had to be someone around to look after him. He also mentioned that a martial master from the sect, hired by the Merchant Guild, would show up as the official witness for the duel tomorrow. Joe just rolled his eyes, thinking it was wild how they were hyping up the witness like stealing was something to flex. Let everyone know they weren't messing around, this was them going all in. He was heated, calling out the merchant guild, saying those guys were so ruthless they'd torch everything, not leaving a single trace behind. He told Joe to head over to the spot they agreed on and chill there until he showed up. He figured the two younger guys were definitely about to be surprised by everything going down. The next morning, sat down for breakfast. He noticed the meat was getting harder to chew lately and wondered if anyone else thought the same. Sitting across from him with his tea let him know he wasn't the only one. Turns out the cheaper beef always comes out tough. Tapped on the forehead, kind of joking around, and wanted to know if was already broke. Just kept sipping his tea, not really bothered, and thought about how the chief steward never really gave them enough cash to begin with. Could tell seemed off and asked if he was being moody. Brushed it off, saying he wasn't upset about something that small. Still, couldn't figure out why he'd said something that might get him in trouble. Finished eating and set his chopsticks down, then got up and straightened out his clothes. He turned to, wanting to know if his look was on point today. Just looked at him, not really showing any emotion, and straight up admitted he actually looked better when he had those bandages on. Tapped on the forehead again, spun around and started walking off like he knew exactly where he was going. Just nodded and trailed behind, not making a fuss. Picked up his massive sword on the way out of the room. Outside the courtyard, Elder Shin showed up and wanted to know if was actually about to leave. Squinted, hoping Shin wasn't about to start up with the whole running away talk again. Shin let him know he was wrong, so checked again just to be sure. After that, told Shin to hang tight because he was about to go handle those thieves and teach them a serious lesson. Dropped his head, showing respect, and let everyone know he was tagging along with. Just looked at him and stayed quiet. He shut his eyes and figured the old man was just stressing way too much. He knew he'd handle everything himself, no problem. Maybe adults just overthink stuff. A few seconds later, pushed open the main gate. He took a slow, deep breath in, then let it out, steadying himself. He started moving ahead, ready to get going. Later on, at the clan estate, the whole town was buzzing because everyone knew the big fight was about to go down. Some guy started yelling in the middle of the busy street, letting everyone know there was about to be a duel between the merchants and the clan. He told people to get their bets in quick. Instantly, the crowd started buzzing, everyone asking each other about the odds and who had the better shot. The bookmaker checked his notes and said the odds were basically 1-4. After thinking it over, one of the guys decided that was a fair payout and was down to take the bet. He pointed out that no real fighter would pick a merchant crew over a martial clan. After saying that, he put 2 silver yang down, backing the clan. Out of nowhere, a guy standing next to the bed noticed something far off and started pointing. He recognized someone important. It was the young master from the clan. When pulled up to the clan estate, literally everyone started watching him. He didn't care at all about the stairs, he just kept moving forward, totally locked in. Just kept munching on his Bing Tang Hulu. When he saw what just happened, the guy who'd thrown his money on the clan suddenly wanted out of his bet. Grabbed another bite of his dessert, chilling next to Elder Du. He seemed pretty proud, showing off that he'd made it on time. Elder Du just looked at all the food was putting away and thought it was kinda wild to eat that much right before a fight. At the entrance, a woman showed up with her umbrella already open. She noticed and said hey, pointing out it had been some time since they last saw each other. The woman in front of him was his own relative. Because they were family, she paused for a second and checked again if he was really serious about going through with the duel. People standing around started talking quietly, surprised that the Wa side actually asked for the fight first. Some of them threw shade, saying the Wa clan didn't really have the skills but still jumped in without thinking. Watching how Wild was acting, it seemed like those rumors about them weren't just talk. Popped the last hulu in his mouth, thinking how everyone was acting like his clan started this whole duel mess. He decided right then he was going to pay them back for it. He aimed the stick from his snack right at Grinned and made it clear they weren't about to let the merchants get their hands on the clan's secret manual. At that point there was really only one option left, they had to throw down. The whole crowd kind of froze for a second when they heard that. Everyone started whispering, trying to figure out if a big-name family like Wa would actually go after a martial clan's secret technique. Eyed him, curious about how long he could really keep his cool. Later on, everyone gathered at the arena, getting ready for the duel to kick off. The whole place suddenly filled with a loud voice, catching everyone's attention. Word went out that Han from the sect was stepping up as the official witness. Gang stepped up and started naming the fighters. Du Bo was set to take over the Wa merchant group next. The young boss of the clan. He said they had to fight fair because of the sect's authority. Right after, the whole crowd went wild, up on the stage. Du Bo opened his arms wide at Mu Jin with a smug look, clearly noticing that Mu Jin got whatever their group shipped over. Mu Jin just stood there, looking pretty lost. Du Bo made it clear that the martial outfit had on was actually the clan's gear, sent straight from him as a way to welcome back. Pulled out his massive sword from behind him. He raised it up, the ties dropping off, and set the shaft on his shoulder like he owned the place. With a quick grin, he let them know that after the duel, everything else would have to go back too. Everyone in the crowd started whispering when they spotted weapon. One guy even wondered if the Wa clan actually used swords in their fights. Some guys started questioning if anyone could actually fight with a sword that huge. Someone else brought up that the Flame Emperor was famous for throwing hands, not swinging weapons. Up in the viewing area, Elder Du looked over at and asked if the young master had acted any different today. Paused for a second, then told him that earlier when he joked about running away, got mad fast. Elder Du just let out a sigh, pointing out that had actually brought up running away to him too. Tightened his grip, totally convinced their young master had this win on lock. He started second-guessing his choice, thinking maybe he should just dipped instead. Part of him hoped that things might actually play out better this time since the young master wasn't acting like his old self. Still, it felt weird how fast that switch happened. Elder Du just shut his eyes, stressed out over whether the young master's craziness was rubbing off on two. The guy in charge of the gong yelled out, making sure both teams were set to go. Squared up and got ready too, both of them locked in and ready to throw down. Once everyone was ready, the official got things started. He hit the gong with his mallet, signaling the duel was on. The sound echoed, letting everyone know it was go time. Didn't waste a second, he just charged in and swung his massive sword. Dubo watched as the attack went down. He stepped up and caught the hit with his own sword. Everyone in the crowd just froze for a second, not believing what they were seeing. Word started spreading quick. Nobody expected young master, who everyone thought was losing it and couldn't even fight, to show off that kind of power. He stood on stage. Dubo clenched his jaw, annoyed, and couldn't help but scoff to himself. In his mind, he knew the move was impressive, but he still saw it as something only a rookie would pull off. He rushed ahead, sword swinging hard. Came in strong, swinging his huge weapon to push back. Both fighters went all in, trading blade swings back and forth. Every hit made the whole arena ring out, keeping everyone on edge. Dubo swung hard and his sword barely nicked his face. Blood started running down his cheek while he pulled back fast, dodging the rest of the attack. He started making his way across the stage, but Bo was right on his tail, not letting up for a second. The swords crashed together, ringing out loud. Bo was right up in his face, grinning while their blades stayed locked. They kept trading blows fast, neither one letting up. Up in the top viewing spot, had her eyes locked on the fight. She honestly didn't expect to hang in there this long. This was actually catching her off guard. He was tougher than she thought. But honestly, next to the martial arts Dubo had been grinding all this time, his own moves barely stacked up. Up on stage, went all in with his massive sword, swinging so close that Du's bow almost got sliced. Changed how he held his weapon, ready to make his next move right away. Dubo jumped up fast, dodging out of the way. Glanced up right as something came at him, barely moving out of the way. Du's bow came down fast, aiming to hit hard. After they split up, they just looked at each other. Dubo was sure he'd mess up for good this time. He lifted his sword, getting ready for whatever was coming next. He pointed it straight at, basically letting everyone know that crushing someone's spirit was his thing. He didn't waste any time and darted ahead. Stepped up, stopping the hit, but then Bo came in right after with a quick swing. Leaned back quick to dodge at the same time. Up in the top viewing area, Elder Du and watched everything go down, barely able to process what they were seeing. Elder Du had kind of assumed young master would get wiped out right away, but seeing him actually hold his own was wild. Was just a surprise, thinking maybe was still keeping some of his real power hidden. Elder Du Shin looked over at him, kind of confused about what he was getting at. Ma let him know he'd been secretly checking out solo training sessions, hinting that might be hiding something huge, like something way stronger than anyone expected. Up on stage, the fight paused again when both fighters backed off from each other. Was out of breath, sweat running down his face, and he realized his skills pretty much matched the guys he was up against. He started thinking maybe he hadn't trained long enough, but honestly he decided it didn't even matter at this point. Looking back, no matter how tough his enemies got, he always ended up taking them out. Now he was set on making sure this guy didn't get away either. He raised his massive sword, red energy lighting up the blade like it was about to pop off. Bo did the same, but his sword started glowing blue, energy crackling down the edge. Both of them locked eyes, not backing down for a second. The air got heavy and everything felt like it was about to go off. They both took off at the same time, not wasting a second. Somewhere else. Elder Joe took a good look at the notes Elder Du had handed over. The directions were pretty straightforward. Start at that rundown hut, go east for 5 kilometers, then hang a turn when you see a hawthorn tree and keep going for another 3. After trekking through all that and feeling the wind hit his face, Elder Joe finally made it to where he was supposed to be, letting out a heavy sigh when he got there. He thought he'd actually made it, and honestly, it was a relief. Both kids were out cold, so moving them was a breeze. He remembered talking earlier that morning. Right before he dipped out of the clan estate, he looked at Elder Do, wanting to know if he was really going to go alone. Elder Du said was still family to that person, so someone had to make sure his body was taken care of. He decided he'd handle his final send-off himself. Elder Joe just turned around, said they'd head out first, and told everyone to meet up later where they planned. Back in the moment, Elder Joe let out another long sigh and stared up at the sky. He was honestly unsure if what they were doing made any sense. Back at the clan's place and were still going at it. Their swords kept crashing together, neither one letting up. Watch move, kind of impressed that the guy could keep up, especially since he was still young. But honestly, could tell still had a lot to learn. He was pretty much a rookie compared to real pros. Everyone in the crowd was glued to the fight, whispering to each other and trying to figure out how these two were going toe-to-toe. Nobody really got how young Master was pulling ahead. People remembered hearing that the second son from the Merchant Guild trained as an outer sect disciple but honestly he never stood out or looked that special. Heard the crowd talking behind him and it got under his skin. He clenched his teeth, totally fired up, and just let his anger take over as he reacted. He swung his sword hard, aiming straight at. Up in the viewing area, Elder Du and saw the attack coming fast. They tried to warn young Master to get out of the way. Meanwhile, just watched with a grin, totally unbothered by the whole thing. Got ready and started showing off a move. It was called Solitary Nine Swords. He kicked things off with the first form, going all out with something he called Total Annihilation. He swung hard but saw it coming and got his guard up just in time. Everyone in the crowd froze, surprised that the shot actually got blocked. Grinned, totally locked in as their swords slammed against each other. Let out a grunt as it hit him was just way too strong. After a short pause pushed off him, slid back and the two just kept staring each other down. Just flashed a grin, totally unfazed, while tensed up his jaw tight. You could tell was not having it. Dude looked mad annoyed at its energy. Switched up his stance, and the air around him basically started buzzing with energy. From up in the viewing area, Elder Du watched the fight, thinking that young Master was really pulling together all his energy. Gang and both locked onto the same idea. This had to be his last move. Started powering up, focusing hard, but out of nowhere just lunged at him, grinning like he already won. Wasn't ready for that move at all. His eyes went wide, caught totally off guard. Pulled out another move right after. He dropped the Solitary Nine Swords, switching it up to the second form, breaking form. Went in hard and tried blocking with his sword, but his blade just got knocked away fast, making a loud metal sound. Didn't waste any time and went right back in with another swing. Dubo managed to block it, but he was clearly struggling, his jaw tight and his face showing pure frustration. Deep down, he couldn't believe he was getting pushed around by someone who didn't even have an energy core. They went at it again, swords crashing together as the fight kept going. Sword started to split, tiny cracks showing up fast. A second later, his sword snapped clean in two. Just like that, everything changed. Went in fast, swinging his sword and slicing off his arm. Size went wide, caught totally off guard. Before he could even process what was happening, already had his leg up and ready to move. He slammed his foot hard into his stomach. Got blasted back so hard he couldn't even hold in a yell. He hit the floor and kept sliding, only stopping right at the edge of the stage, once he finally stopped moving. His hand, now completely cut off, hit the ground. Up in the main viewing spot, his mom Boo just lost it and started yelling his name for everyone to hear. Across the room, Elder Do and started breathing hard, totally caught off guard by what they just saw. Spun around on the stage and headed straight for the chopped off hand. The crowd started buzzing, everyone wondering if young Master actually pulled off the win. Reached down and grabbed the cut-off hand. He raised it and aimed right at. He let everyone know he was about to take this arm, settling the score for 17 years of holding back. His voice was unsteady, and his face looked totally crushed as he tried to figure out what the guy just said. Figured since it was the Merchant Guild, they might actually have a way to fix the arm and put it back on. Out of nowhere, someone dropped down from the top stands. It was Han Yi Gang, landing right next to where was lying on the ground. He quickly reached out and checked, trying to figure out what was going on. After a few seconds, sprinted up to on the stage. Han took a quick look at and let everyone know that was completely wrecked. He got up and stared at, kind of wondering if things really had to get pushed this far. Just gave him a look, like he couldn't believe Gang was even asking. Han pointed out how the skill difference was obvious, and honestly the fight had been decided way before it even ended. Wasn't about to let that slide. If that's how they were talking, he had his own thoughts ready to fire back. He shot a hard look at and brought up if it really made sense to use the 7 wounds fist strike on a little kid, especially one who was only 5 and didn't even know how to fight. He said this was just payback for something that happened 17 years back. Since they messed with the clan, it was finally time for them to deal with the consequences. After he said his piece, just turned and started walking off. Dropped straight to her knees like her legs just gave out. She tightened her hand into a fist and just let it all out, her voice echoing through the room. She sat there crying, telling herself there's no way she'd ever forget what happened with. Everyone just stood there, totally frozen, watching as walked off after the fight. The crowd went wild, cheering and hyped up as they talked about how he took down an outer disciple from the sect in just a couple moves. Everyone started talking about the sword moves. They'd never seen anything like it before. Right then, everyone knew a new martial master had just stepped up. Walked off the stage and right away, Elder Du and moved fast toward him, both calling out for him as they closed the gap. Just kept moving forward, telling the others to turn around and head back. Elder Du couldn't really process what just happened, so he kind of nodded, still looking confused. He watched head off and realized he never noticed how solid young master looked walking away like that. Just as he was lost in his own head, looked back at him and called for Chief Steward Du. Elder Du answered, so kept going. Elder Du got thrown off for a second and kind of stumbled over his words, not really sure what they were talking about. In his head, he started getting nervous, thinking maybe he was already onto the whole escape plan. Smirked and cleared his throat, then brought up the gold he'd given to Elder Du, wondering if the guy had already blown through it all. Elder Du let out a weird laugh, kind of awkward, making it obvious he wasn't telling the whole truth. He tried to play it cool, saying there was still some left. Didn't stick around, he just kept walking and started talking about needing to hit up the loan syndicate again since cash was tight. Lately those meetups were getting rough. He stopped for a second, then kept going. Oh yeah, there was something else, something about Elder Joe and the rest of the squad. He honestly doesn't mind if they decide to walk away from the clan. He couldn't even imagine what he'd do if anyone tried to separate him from his two little siblings. He shot a cold stare right at Elder Doe, eyes locked in with serious intent. At this point, they both knew this was all or nothing. One of them might not walk away. Later that day, somewhere else, Elder Joe was just chilling on a rock, staring at this letter when jumped on him, clearly upset that all this drama was happening right when her brother's big fight was about to go down. Off to the side, just stood there, letting everyone know he was done with Elder Joe this time, no passes given. Elder Joe was trying to keep it together with the kids all over him, saying he just needed a second to check out the message that showed up with the pigeon. He finally got a chance to read through the letter for a bit. He looked around and thought to himself that they were totally done for. The letter said that young master came out on top in the duel, but their plan to sneak out got busted, so they needed to head back right away. They were about to head out when suddenly stopped and looked back at Elder Du. He brought up money stuff and decided it was the perfect moment to start what he liked to call a debt party. Elder Du looked lost when he heard the word, so explained he was talking about the loan syndicate, the group everyone also calls the sect. Stood up, making it clear he'd take care of things himself, and told Elder Du to chill out and get some rest. Elder Du looked uneasy. He couldn't help but worry, even though the duel earlier showed was on a whole new level now. Still, he just couldn't shake that feeling. Brushed it off, calling Elder Du way too protective for his own good. But Elder Du pushed back, telling not to get mixed up with the social sect no matter what. Just shrugged off the warning and told him again he got it. Once Elder Du left, wondered if was actually planning to take on the sect head-on. Just folded his arms, making it clear he liked to deal with tough stuff right away instead of letting it drag out. He glanced over at and told him to stick right behind his boss from now on. Nodded right away, but he looked kind of confused about being called that. Later, over at Ma looked pretty uneasy when showed up. In his head, he honestly never thought he'd run into again, especially after seeing take down the ruthless second son from the merchant crew. As soon as said he was there to pay back what he owed, Ma just froze. Strolled by, noticing how quiet it was, and tossed out a comment about the place maybe flopping. Clenched his jaw, trying to hold it together before explaining what was really going on. Almost everyone who usually gambled in showed up at Stool, so the local gambling spots were basically deserted. Could tell right away that everyone was probably betting on his fight. It was obvious. Ma and the sect guys dropped a deep O, basically saying sorry for any disrespect. Figured they'd probably bet on him to win and scored some easy cash off it. Ma kept his head down and didn't really want to admit it, but he confirmed what everyone already knew. Didn't let it slide. He pointed out how they'd been making solid cash because of him, and started wondering if they were just going to keep all that profit to themselves without saying a word. Ma looked up, annoyed, thinking was just trying to push them for more. He quickly tried to clear things up, making sure knew they meant to thank him the right way. Walked into the next room looking pretty pleased with himself. He dropped into a chair, clearly vibing with what just happened. From the back, Ma kept an eye on him, thinking about how much had changed compared to before. The air felt cold and steady around him, giving off that serious vibe you'd expect from someone who's mastered fighting and isn't afraid to throw down. Wanted to know where the sect leader was, so he asked about him. Ma paused for a second, clearly unsure, and then wondered what needed with the leader anyway. Set his hand down on the table and got up fast. He made it clear he wasn't about to say the same thing twice. But right as he started laying down the threat, the sect leader jumped in. Walked into the room with another guy right behind him. Checked them out and couldn't help but grin, especially when he saw his haircut. It just looked way off. He started messing with wondering if this guy was actually in charge. Didn't seem fazed and just let know his crew had already told him about rolling up. Wondered out loud why they had to act tough when all he wanted was to talk, and honestly he threw some shade at looks. After that, pointed over at one of the guys standing behind, trying to figure out if he was just backup or something. The guy moved up and you could actually see his kai all around him, steady and strong. He shot a quick smirk, kind of impressed by how bold this kid was talking. That guy Dong Sal, repping the social sect, didn't miss a beat. He kept going, straight up wondering if was just after his cash. Watched Dong Sal come closer and slid his hand into his pocket, already sizing the guy up as someone from the social sect. Without holding back, basically shut him down, making it clear the grown-ups were talking and wondering if Dong Sal was actually trying to get himself in trouble. Dong Sal let out a quick laugh, then out of nowhere, He charged straight at, daring him to go ahead and try to take him out. Suddenly yelled out to the young master from behind, catching him off guard. Pulled a chopstick out of his pocket, started spinning it in his hand like he'd done it a million times and made it clear. Didn't matter what crew they repped, if anyone tried to stop him, they were getting wrecked. He launched the chopstick straight at, tried to catch it with his left hand, but the chopstick went right through his palm. He stumbled backwards. Didn't expect it, but suddenly it hit him. Wasn't just some regular dude. He flexed his right hand, checking out the spot where the chopsticks went through. Honestly, he thought the whole thing was pretty wild and gave a nod for being unpredictable. Meanwhile, just brushed it off, not really bothered at all, and didn't care about anything coming from some old dude. Rushed in fast, warning not to get too confident. Jumped in too, but out of nowhere. He vanished for a second, then suddenly popped up right over Dong's cell, still in the air. Wondered what spot Dong was focused on. Dong swung at with his fists, trying to land a hit, but just slipped past every move like it was nothing. Stood over, grinning like he'd just owned the whole fight. Tightened his jaw, honestly stunned that someone younger could dodge his move without even breaking a sweat. His vibe turned cold as he threw out a suggestion to make things even crazier. Dong Sal barely had a second to process what was happening, was already going for his right eye with a chopstick. It all happened in a flash, no time to dodge or think. He went straight for Dong's eye with the knife, and just stopped dead when they saw it. Stood over, who was down on his knees, holding his eye and groaning, blood running through his fingers. Just smiled, clearly enjoying the moment, and made a joke about his busted eye. Lost it, yelling threats about the social sect coming after for what he did. He started talking about going after his family and the guys who work for him too, but before he could even get all the words out, slammed his foot right into his face, and the chopstick that was already stuck there just got pushed in even more. Stared down at him, basically daring the social sect to show up if they had the guts. While he waited, he made it clear Sal wasn't making it out of there alive. Freaked out and started begging, desperate to stay alive. He said could take all his stuff, money, girls, whatever, if he just let him go. Just stared, trying to figure out why wanted to live so bad all of a sudden. He stepped forward and pulled the chopstick out of his eye. He said he wasn't into having concubines, but the talk about all that money definitely caught his attention. Dong Sal started yelling that everything he owned was in, and he was about to go get it all back right now. Nodded, kind of liking how was acting, but he didn't let him off easy. He let know in a way that sent a chill down his spine that messing up wasn't an option. If didn't come back, things would get ugly real quick. Totally freaked out, stumbling back and promising he'd be right back before bolting out of there. The room went quiet and locked eyes on, his stare cold enough to make anyone freeze. He told them they should keep working on paying off what they owed. Started shaking as soon as stepped up. He dropped fast, forehead on the floor, doing whatever he could to show he was sorry. Just walked over and looked down, checking if was really about to start begging too. Totally lost it, yelling that he'd hand over all his stuff. Stood over him holding another chopstick, just staring him down. He was icy with it, making it clear that was talking out of pocket, everything already belonged to. His voice came out unsteady, not really sure what was getting at. Broke it down for saying that everything he made, those 7,000 gold he took from regular people, plus the cost of all the lives he messed up by messing with the martial clans, basically added up to everything he owned. Just stopped for a second, looked up at and got ready to hand it all over, not holding anything back. Before he could even get the words out, just launched a chopstick straight into his forehead. Dropped, instantly gone just like that. Just stared, totally unbothered, thinking really wasn't getting the point. Why keep offering something that already belonged to him? Right then, Spotty dropped to the ground. Ma and the other guys from the sect just stopped in their tracks, faces stuck with their eyes wide open and jaws dropped. They were completely stunned, not moving an inch. Turned around and asked who was running things next. Ma didn't waste any time. He stepped up, looking a bit on edge, and said he was the vice sect leader. Didn't expect that and looked a little surprised. Ma dropped to his knees, head down, desperate to not get wiped out. He was basically promising he'd turn his whole life around if he just got one more shot. Dropped into the chair and nodded, giving the go-ahead. After that, he wanted to know how much the dead leader's stuff was worth. Ma dropped a paper on the table, laying out the numbers. His house, his brothel, and all his cash together came out to around 4,000 gold. Then someone wanted to know what the sect had in total. He answered that counting every place, the total was at least 10,000 gold. That included the 500 gold he had to hand over as tribute to the social sect. Took a good look at the paper, breaking down the numbers in his head. He counted up the leader's stash for 000 gold, plus all the businesses he figured should be his again. Then there were the assets, which came out to about 10,000 gold, and the 500 gold they owed as tribute. He didn't forget to add in a chunk for all the mental stress they'd put him through, bringing the total to roughly 20,000 gold. Ma just stared, not buying the whole emotional damage thing, but stood by his math and said it was only fair. Ma didn't even think twice. He said he'd get the transfer papers ready on the spot. Told him to sort out everything with gold right there in the room, no messing around. Ma nodded, showing he was on board, and the whole room got quiet. Then out of nowhere, vibe changed, his voice got serious, with a cold edge that made everyone pay attention. He glanced over at the guys who were still standing and told them they should probably start talking about ransom if they wanted to get out. He made it clear that Ma was the only one he decided to let go, and no one else had that guarantee. Right away, the rest of the group started begging, desperate to not get taken out. Back at the clan estate, Elder Du just froze when he saw this massive stack of wooden crates, all packed with gold. He stared, totally confused by everything going on, showed up behind him saying he'd just come back from the debt party. He noticed that every chest had around 400 gold inside. Elder Do looked over at the crates, then switched his attention straight to. He kept things formal with pointing out that he'd already dropped a warning about who was supporting the crew. Remembered it was the group backing them. Elder Do, not wasting any time, pressed to see if he knew who else was rolling with. Just shrugged it off, clearly not bothered and acting like he couldn't care less. Elder Du called out that from the Crimson Sword sect was basically brothers with Dong Sao, and from the social sect. Realized Dang Sao was that guy with the jet black fingers. Elder Du froze when he realized had already run into him. Didn't even hesitate, he just said he stabbed the guy in the eyes with chopsticks. Elder Du was totally caught off guard, barely able to react. Got real serious and made it clear to Elder Du that guys like that were probably out of his and Elder Joe's league, but that didn't mean would hold back just because they couldn't handle it. If people like that came after him, he'd take them out without a second thought. He switched things up. He told Elder Do to get some soft beef ready for dinner and make sure his siblings ate when they got back. After that, he went inside. Elder Du just stood there frozen as walked off. He couldn't believe what he'd just seen. Sal was the kind of guy everyone in Sichuan avoided but acted like it was nothing. Remembering how wild things got during the duel, Elder Du started questioning if this was really the same young master he used to know. When it got dark, he was chilling in his room at the Hua Merchant Guild. Some random guy showed up and called out, pointing out that if she was plotting to ambush the clan, she must really been thrown off by how the duel ended. Didn't even bother turning around, she just shut them down, letting them know they were just paid muscle and that they should probably keep quiet. She repeated her orders, no messing this up. Only one kid could make it out alive and that one was untouchable. The others, do whatever, just don't let anything happen to the main target. One of the mysterious figures let out a low laugh, promising her they'd be back before the sun came up. After they left, sat there thinking nonstop about. In her head, she promised herself she'd ruin everything that mattered to him, and she wouldn't stop until he saw it all fall apart. Elder Du watched as young master headed off, stuck in his own thoughts about the clan's past. Back in the day, the Yum clan was on top, all because of the Flame Emperor. This guy was so impressive that martial artists from everywhere would show up just to watch him train. Even the Tang clan, who had a big name themselves, gave him props for both his skills and who he was as a person. In just one generation, the Yum clan had gone from just another group to a powerhouse everyone had to respect. Even the top martial artists didn't mess with the clan's fighters. Back in the day, whenever the clan showed up everyone would get hyped and start cheering them on. After the Flame Emperor died, right when they were choosing who'd be the next leader, everyone could see now that the new patriarch just wasn't up for the job. The Yum clan started falling off hard and even the die-hard supporters weren't sticking around. Elder Do couldn't stop thinking about the Flame Emperor. Back in his day, he was basically a legend. The Orthodox sects respected him as a real hero, someone who didn't mess around, but to his rivals, he was a straight-up powerhouse, almost unbeatable. That dude was on another level. Elder Du watched young master walking away and couldn't help but notice how much he looked like the Flame Emperor in that moment. Out of nowhere, someone started yelling outside, calling for the chief steward. The voice was hard to miss and grabbed everyone's attention. Elder Do spun around to face the gate, catching his breath as the warriors came in. He noticed they showed up alone and wanted to know where the young master and young lady were, wondering why they hadn't come back with the group. One of the warriors, still catching his breath, suddenly yelled out that the merchant group had sent assassins to ambush them. Elder Joe and his crew were out there doing everything they could to hold them off, but there were just way too many enemies closing in. Elder Do just stood there, totally stunned after hearing the news. His mind raced, realizing the young master and young lady could be in real trouble. He told the warriors to let young master know ASAP, then took off to get there himself. One of the warriors, looking pretty nervous, agreed right away. Elder Du didn't waste any time. He sprinted outside to jump in and help. Somewhere else, a group of assassins closed in on Elder Joe. He stood his ground, making sure, and stayed safe behind him. One of the assassins stepped up, his voice cold as he aimed his sword, still dripping with blood, right at them. He made it clear these guys were the last ones standing, but he wasn't planning to wipe out everyone. He let them know they had to make a choice fast, throwing out a warning that if anyone tried anything, even the kids might not make it. Elder Joe completely lost it and started yelling at the assassins, his face all fired up. Out of nowhere, something flew in from far away and crashed into one of the assassins. A fan smacked his weapon right out of his hand, leaving him unarmed in seconds. The fan bounced off the trees, flying all over the place. When Elder Joe glanced back to see where it went, he caught a glimpse of Elder Do grabbing it out of the air like it was nothing. Elder Do gripped his fan tight and made it clear everyone needed to chill and back off. One of the assassins started clowning him, calling him an old, cocky dude who deserved to get dropped. The crew didn't wait, they charged straight at Elder Do. He was ready though, blocking everything with his fan like it was nothing. Out of nowhere, one assassin tried to get fancy and hit him from the side, throwing shade about sending just one old guy. Elder Do didn't even flinch. He shifted fast and took down 3 assassins at once, smooth and quick. He was flipping through the air, totally upside down, down below. Elder Joe yelled at him, making sure he didn't mess up or do something dumb. Down below Elder Do, an assassin had his eyes on him, getting his sword ready for a sneak attack. The assassin came at him with a fast swing, but Elder Do managed to block it just in time. He tumbled across the floor and hit the ground hard. Annoyed at how things were going, he let out a yell. He barely had a second to catch his breath before two assassins came sprinting at him, ready for action. One of the assassins went at Elder Do with his sword, and Elder Do barely managed to hold him off using his closed fan. The metal-on-metal sound rang out, grabbing everyone's attention. While they were fighting, the assassin yelled out that they'd take care of this side and only let one kid walk away, planning to finish off the rest. Elder Do, still holding his ground, fired back at the assassins with some harsh words. Out of nowhere, the second assassin came in from the side, telling Elder Do to just give up. He landed a hit, and blood started pouring from Elder Do's chest as he let out a painful groan. The assassin in front of him yelled and went right in for another hit. The attack landed on Elder Do again, cutting into his body and making him yell out. Blood started pouring from the fresh wound, showing just how rough things were getting. Elder Do dropped right in front of the kids and they just froze, staring. One of the assassins walked up, eyeing the two, trying to decide which kid to take out and which one to leave alive. His hands wouldn't stop shaking, but he didn't even hesitate. He jumped in front of his little sister, ready to block anything coming their way. Standing behind him was just as scared, her whole body barely holding it together as she called out for him. The assassin kept moving in, sword in hand, totally locked in on since he'd stepped up. He raised his blade, looking like he was about to end it right there. But right as he was about to swing, a wild scream blasted through the whole forest, making everyone freeze. Everyone just stopped in their tracks when that voice boomed out. Off in the distance, came running up, looking seriously mad, charging straight at them with his massive sword ready to go. One of the assassins spotted him and instantly recognized him as that crazy guy. As charged straight at them, one of the assassins started talking, kind of doubting if taking out would even change anything. The guy next to him just said if caused any problems, they'd just take him out too. Moved in, closing the gap between him and the assassin. The assassin didn't even flinch, he just stood there, totally sure of himself, and let know he wasn't making it to tomorrow. Went for it and slashed his sword. When their swords hit, the assassin's blade snapped and pieces shot up into the air. The hit made the assassin's arms shake hard. Didn't wait, he lifted his massive sword right away. He brought it down fast. He sliced the assassin clean in two. He didn't waste a second and just charged straight at the next assassin. One of the guys in the back just stood there, totally stunned by what he saw. Was closing the gap when one assassin suddenly called out for everyone to gang up and take him down. Right after, four of them rushed straight at him. Froze for a second, both hands tight on his sword, then just went for it with this move called Peerless Nine Swords Fifth Form Army Slayer. His blade tore through the assassins midair, slicing them up before they even hit the ground. One assassin on the ground tried to catch him off guard, but dodged right away, not even breaking a sweat. He stared right at the assassin. He spotted a gap and without wasting a second took out the assassin with a clean cut. The guy's head and body both hit the floor. From the back, another assassin just froze up, totally thrown off by how strong was. To him, looked like some kind of beast. Didn't waste a second, he launched his massive sword straight at the assassin and sliced off the guy's right arm clean. The assassin just dropped, yelling in pain, hitting the ground hard. Walked up to him, calm but serious, letting him know with his stare that if he tried anything, it'd be game over. Glanced over at the elders and his little brothers and sisters. Blinked awake. She spotted her older brother and quietly said his name under her breath. Quickly covered his eyes so she couldn't see what was going on. Got super confused, wondering what was up and if had already handled the troublemakers. Moved in closer, still covering her eyes and telling her not to peek. Walked over to check if they were good. Glanced up, his voice kind of unsteady, saying he was alright. Could tell had been spooked, but quickly tried to play it off, saying he wasn't scared. He even reminded everyone he was from a martial clan just to flex a little. Reached over and gave a quick pat on the head, then started talking to him. He smiled at him, looking proud, like he was saying he did a good job. He looked over at Elder Joe, who had Elder Do injured and barely holding on, propped up beside him. Without wasting time, he told Elder Joe to get the wounded and his siblings back to the manor. Elder Joe didn't hesitate, he was all in right away. He told everyone to head straight to the infirmary. Spun around and looked at the last assassin, the one missing his right arm. The guy was still making noise about his injury, but clearly thought he needed to get over it. Explained that the assassin came from the merchant group spy network. He told the guy straight up that if he gave him the answers he wanted, maybe he'd let him walk away. The assassin, still down on the ground, blurted out, asking if was actually serious about sparing him. Just shut him down, making it clear he wasn't joking around and could easily take out everyone there if he felt like it. The assassin didn't even hesitate and dropped the name, the boss running the merchant group. The guy who brought them in was with the Death Forest crew. He wanted to double check if was actually gonna let him walk away. Grabbed his massive sword, basically letting him know that if he wanted to survive, he'd better hurry back and deliver a message to He leaned in, voice dropping, and told him to make sure she knew every detail, how from the clan wiped out his whole crew, and now he was coming for her too. Later on, headed back to the clan manor, just making his way through the streets. People started noticing him right away, eyeing the blood all over him and quietly talking among themselves, trying to figure out who he was. People walking by started recognizing him. They remembered he was that wild dude from the clan. Someone thought maybe he'd finally chilled out, but another guy jumped in, saying he actually looked even more out of control than last time. Anyone who saw him walking down the side of the road, totally covered in blood, just stopped laughing and dropped the attitude. No one was clowning on him now. Some guys in the crowd started talking about how they'd heard he took down the whole sect by himself. Those dudes were known for being ruthless. They also said he left the merchant guild's second son messed up, couldn't even walk right after. Back in the day, people used to call the mad young master. Now, as everyone kept whispering, curiosity started to build up. A few people pointed out how wild it was, remembering that when he was a kid, even the sect showed up wanting to meet him, like he was some kind of chosen one. Now, folks were starting to wonder if that old legend was making a comeback, calling him the hidden dragon of. Pulled up to the manor and pushed open the front door. Didn't waste a second, he just sprinted right at him, ready to throw down. He stood there with his arms wide open, just letting it all out. Blocked the hug, grabbing the guy's face to keep him off. Kept talking, clearly worried, but also kind of relieved to see the young master up and moving on his own. He checked if was hurt at all. Brushed it off, saying he was good, then asked if everyone else was over at the medicine hall. Said yeah, nobody got away without getting banged up, but the second young master and lady were chilling in their rooms, trying to get their energy back. Nodded at him, impressed, then told him to get a bath ready right away. Got the message and told to hang tight for a second. When it got dark, just chilled in the bath, finally able to relax. His mind drifted back to how his younger siblings acted earlier. He remembered how taking a break just to get some energy back was never an option for kids from a martial clan. He really hoped those two didn't have to see how rough the world could get, at least not yet. He wanted them to only know the good stuff for now. For a second, he started to think maybe he was just trying to protect someone else through them. While grabbing some water with his hand, he caught a glimpse of the younger siblings of the girl he used to care about showing up in the reflection. He paused for a second, just looking at the picture. He let the water out and checked it out. He stared out the window, eyes locked on the moon. The next day, he showed up at the medicine hall. Stood next to Elder Joe, who was just chilling on his bed. He asked him for the Red Flame art manual, hoping to get his hands on it. Elder Joe looked caught off guard and wanted to know why they were asking for this. Stopped for a second, squinting as he wondered if Elder Joe was stressing that he might lose control again and wreck everything. Elder Joe shook his head, brushing off the worry. Didn't back down, instead he just stared right at Elder Joe and laid it out. There's no way the old man could handle teaching the clan's secret moves when he's like this. Made it clear he'd take over and start training the two kids himself beginning tomorrow. When he caught the doubtful look on Elder Joe's face, just sighed, realizing the elder wasn't buying it. Elder Joe kept saying he was wrong about that, but just told him to relax. Nothing bad was going to go down. Once he got the manual, everything changed. Started heading out, telling Elder Joe to take it easy. As he walked away, both Elder Joe and Elder Du, who showed up right behind him, gave respectful bows while watching leave. Once walked out of the medicine hall, Elder Joe dropped down onto his bed, letting out a long sigh. He couldn't help but question if everything was really going to be fine. The other Elder Joe, still posted up next to the bed, told him to chill out. After all, they'd both seen the young master go off with that insane sword skill. Because of that, they actually got treated fast and were already bouncing back. Elder Joe noticed hadn't had any more episodes lately, and it honestly looked like he was getting better, so maybe that Taoist medicine was finally doing its thing. Elder Joe started wondering if that treatment could actually level up someone's martial arts, since he'd never seen anything like it before. Elder Joe basically said there was no way to explain how much he leveled up, unless something huge had happened to him. Elder Joe figured it had to be with someone who was crazy strong in martial arts. Nothing else made sense, so he thought the dark cloud hanging over the Yum clan for 17 years was finally starting to fade. The next day, showed up at the clan's training ground with his younger siblings, ready to teach them some martial arts moves. He started talking about how the butterfly dance was basically the bee buzz, but just looked confused. She honestly had no clue what he was trying to say. Cleared his throat, looking pretty proud as he started talking about his move. He said it was all about locking down your opponent, making them feel stuck, while you still moved around smooth and light, kind of like a butterfly. He explained that this was his own go-to technique, something he came up with after tons of real fights, and just reacted kind of awkward, not really sure what to say. Just called out that Elder basically said didn't have much real fighting experience. Next to her, quickly tried to quiet her down, making it clear she shouldn't be saying that where everyone could hear. Cleared his throat and switched things up, telling both kids to come at him using the simple punch move they just picked up. Looked caught off guard by how fast things changed, but was hyped and ready to go. Both of them jumped in, trying to land a hit on. Just stared, eyes going wide as he tried to process what they were doing. He watched them struggle and couldn't help but think how weak their moves looked. He started wondering if these guys were actually part of a martial clan or just pretending. He started thinking maybe they were just way too young for all this. He couldn't believe how off they were, no balance, no real control, and their bodies just kind of flopped around. Out of nowhere, he just yelled. He'd finally had it and decided to put a stop to everything right then. And just froze and turned to check him out right away. Put his hand on his head and let out a sigh, saying his head was starting to hurt and maybe they should call it a day. Checked if he was okay, pointing out that he hadn't even taken a hit to the head. Still looking a bit unsure, admitted their skills were way above what he thought they'd be. He told everyone to work on getting stronger before they even thought about picking up any crazy moves. Then he let them know to chill out for now, get some rest, and that they'd catch up again at dinner. When his little siblings headed off, just let out another sigh, thinking to himself that this whole thing was gonna be tough. He said sorry to his master. He knew the guy had gone through some rough stuff too. Still, after everything fell apart and the clan lost its fighting roots because of him, he was set on bringing it all back. Fixing the clan's name and getting their skills back on top was his main focus. But above all, he was locked in on tracking down the guy with that cursed swordless mark, the one who beat him last time. He grabbed his sword and he realized the sword felt way lighter now. He could actually hold it with one hand. He started swinging it around, testing how it moved, even jumping pretty high as he messed around. As he practiced, he noticed the air felt charged, like there was some kind of energy buzzing all around him. A few days later, he noticed he was getting faster every time he ran through the sword moves. Elder Joe and Elder Do showed up outside the main hall. Elder Joe showed up and let everyone know he was back, just nodded, not making a big deal out of it. Barely gave them a nod, just saying good work like it was nothing. Couldn't believe it, after everything they'd done to keep the second young master and lady safe, that was all they got. He made sure knew how hard they'd pushed themselves, but snapped right back, calling them out for going off script and asking who said they could be that reckless. He pointed out that if he'd shown up even a little later, it could have been game over for everyone, and warned he'd handle things himself next time if they tried to pull the same stunt. Both elders dropped their heads, basically saying sorry without a word. Out of nowhere, a voice came from the main door. He was seriously leveling up. Everyone looked over as the guy stepped in. The old man talked big about how he was the only one who could help the young master, saying a couple more treatments would fix everything. That guy was Du Young. Just stared, totally thrown off and trying to figure out who this guy even was. Looked over at Du Young, clearly not impressed. He basically told him to leave, saying they didn't have anything for randoms. Wasn't having it, he called out right away, letting him know that Du Young was actually the guy who helped him out before. Quickly faced Du Young and started apologizing a ton, saying the young master still wasn't back to normal yet. Du Young was about to say something, clearing his throat, but just went off, shoving aside and telling him to get out of the way. He broke into a quick grin, saying sorry for acting rude and playing it off like he just didn't realize who was at the door. His whole vibe switched up fast. He shot a cold stare and let him know it was time to come inside and eat after that long trip. Thought back to what told him a few days ago about some Taoist guy who picked up the sect's old school skills. Said this dude was well known for a crazy martial art that could heal people just by using his energy. He even helped out the young master before. Didn't have all the details, but he did mention that the head steward shelled out a ton of money to get this Taoist to show up at the manor. Looked over at Du Young, put two and two together, and figured this had to be the guy. He gave him a friendly invite to come inside. Walked up to the main door, keeping his focus. As he went by, Du Young made a little noise to get his attention and just nodded, all serious, like he was ready for whatever was next. Once shut the door, everything went quiet. Elder Du was walking next to Du Young, but before they got anywhere, jumped in, bringing up how he'd heard Du Young picked up the sect's Taoist legacy. Both Elder Du and Du Young glanced over at Mujin. Was on edge as he answered, admitting it was true. Even though it sounded weird coming from him, he explained he was the only Taoist who actually carried on the real tradition. He then introduced himself as the White Immortal. Popped up out of nowhere, standing face to face with Du Young before he even had a second to react. Suddenly got right up in his face, grinning like he was about to start some trouble. His eyes were wide, almost like he couldn't believe what he was seeing. He started checking if this guy was really calling himself the White Immortal. Thought it was kind of weird since he'd never heard of anyone from Taoist crew making it this far. Du Young started to stumble over his words, trying to convince that he was being serious, but wasn't having it. He stopped him right there and told him to pay attention and be real because there wouldn't be a chance to fix things later. Du Young looked lost, not really getting why was questioning him, and tried to stand his ground, saying he really was the one. He barely got a second to breathe before reached over and snatched the sword off his back. Lifted his sword up, basically daring Du Young to prove he was really Wudang. If Du Young was legit, dodging this swing would be nothing for him. Du Young got caught off guard and stumbled back, letting out a loud yell. Didn't waste any time, he came at him with a sword, and Young just managed to move out of the way before hitting the ground hard. Lying there, Young started calling out, confused and kind of desperate, wanting to know what was going on with and telling the others to step in. Masa jumped in right away, asking what the young master was thinking and trying to prove that the guy in front of them was for real. Suddenly cut him off and told him to hurry up and grab a bucket of water, saying he'd show everyone something funny. Paused, kind of confused, but just stood there, clearly getting annoyed while he waited. After a bit passed a bucket of water, someone dumped it all over Du Young while he was still on the ground. Du Young just let out a loud groan, kind of losing it at how wild everything was getting. He started to wonder if the Yum clan really paid people back by embarrassing someone who actually knew what they were doing, but he didn't even get to finish that thought. Reached over and yanked on Du Young's beard, not holding back at all. He grabbed it right away, barely wasting a second. Elder Joe and just froze when they saw what was on the ground. Du Young let out another yell, caught off guard by what Mujin just did. Called out loud, pointing out the beard was totally fake and saying the guy even took his time gluing it on. He basically exposed him as a straight-up fraud. Time passed. In the main hall, Du Young was just sitting there on the floor, right in the center while the elders and all stood around him. Elder Du started going off on him, calling him out for trying to pull a fast one and even admitting he got fooled himself. Wanted to know what was gonna do about the scammer. Made it clear he wasn't just gonna let the guy walk away. With a creepy grin, he started talking about chopping off Young's arms and legs, maybe even making him a eunuch, thinking that might be enough payback. Young totally panicked and started begging for his life, desperate for Mujin to let him go. But Mujin made it clear he wasn't planning to kill him. If Young died, there'd be no way to get the money back. Instead, Mujin said he'd just take a few things. Du Young suddenly stepped in, yelling for them not to mess with the guy's arms or legs. He was pretty much begging, saying he'd pay back every cent he'd scam. Walked up grinning like he already won. Giving the money back was a no-brainer for him, but he made it clear he wanted payment for the guy's busted arms, and yeah, his manhood too. Young started yelling, promising he'd cough up whatever cash they wanted, just as long as they didn't mess him up any worse. Looked over at Elder Joe, wanting to know how much the scammer got away with. Elder Joe, not really wanting to admit it, said it was 50 gold yang. Couldn't help but laugh, almost like he couldn't believe Elder Joe got played so hard. He couldn't wrap his head around how someone could fall for something that obvious, and honestly started wondering what Elder Joe had even been up to all this time. Elder Joe looked down and started talking about hearing the guy was some kind of top healer. Just lost it right there, cutting him off quick. He made it clear he'd had enough and didn't want to hear any more of Elder Joe's reasons. Looked at and told him to hand over 50 gold yang first. Said the cash wasn't on him right now and told they'd have to head over to his place to grab it. Started moving ahead, noticing the place was still 4 hours out, and told him to go first. Elder Joe called out to see if they should go with him, but just told them not to worry about it and kept moving. He started wondering what these weaklings were even good for, and if he'd have to clean up after them when things went south. He told everyone to chill at home and not mess things up. As they headed out, looked at Du Young and signaled him to get moving up front. Du Young didn't hesitate, he just got right to it. Elder Joe watched them head out, letting out a long breath like he was trying to chill himself out. He told the other Elder Joe they should just trust him this time, and the second Elder Joe just nodded, not saying much. He could tell the young master had changed a lot from who he was before. Du Young and Mujin were just making their way down the street. As they walked, Mujin couldn't help but think it would have been way better if he'd brought a horse along. He started thinking maybe there wasn't even one animal left in the house by the time they got to the corner. Young glanced over at and nodded toward the carriage he rolled up in, pretty much telling him to hop on. Saw the fancy 4-horse carriage and couldn't help but think Du Young must pulled off some serious scams to ride around in something that nice. Everyone thought it was pretty cool. After a bit, climbed into the carriage. He let out a long sigh, kind of annoyed, just staring at how over the top the place looked inside. Young talked about how his gear had cotton inside and leather on the outside, making it way more comfortable for all the traveling he had to do for his job. Once they got inside, noticed how Du Young was basically grinding harder than most legit workers out there, which made him wonder why the guy didn't just get a normal job if he was that locked in. Du Young just gave a respectful bow, letting know he'd stick to the straight path from now on. Stretched out on the soft seat, ready to grab some sleep before they got there. He told Du Young to wake him up when they arrived. Du Young just nodded, kept it respectful, and hoped would get some solid rest. He shut his eyes. Du Young clenched his jaw, thinking the young master was definitely going to wish he hadn't done that. He told the coachman to get moving. They headed out past the city limits, leaving all the noise behind. After a while, they walked straight into the forest. Out of nowhere, the carriage just came to a halt. Du Young jumped out. He looked out toward the horizon and noticed a big guy making his way over. Joe showed up and made it clear he wanted the guy in the carriage pulled out to set an example. The big dude heading over wasn't happy about it. He clenched his jaw, annoyed that stuff like this kept messing with his job. He couldn't figure out why anyone would want to get in the way of a Taoist just trying to help people out. He stepped into the carriage. He looked at who was out cold and thought this was what happens when you mess around where you shouldn't. His hand tightened into a fist, pulling back as energy started building up around his arm, almost like he was hyping himself up for what he had to do. He figured had no reason to be mad at them. But right after he threw his punch, his eyes went wide. Something totally unexpected just happened. Woke up just in time, catching the punch with his sword. He was confused, trying to figure out what was going on. He shot a look at the big dude, basically checking if they were there yet. Raised his sword and went right at the guy. He stopped it just in time, using the guard on his arm. After the hit, the big guy got tossed way out of the carriage. Young just stared, eyes wide, barely believing what he was seeing. The big guy raised his shaky hand, the same one that stops Hit, and started talking. He realized Hidden Dragon was for real, not just hype. Hopped out of the carriage, looking around and wondering when turned into such a lonely, out there place. He started to wonder if he'd been the plan all along. At first, he thought she was just a regular scammer, but now it looked like she was way better at playing games than he realized. Out of nowhere, Kai shot out from ramping things up. He was already starting to get bored, so he figured it was time to see what the other guy could actually do. The big guy called out, telling everyone to come out. A few seconds later, another person walked out of the trees, clearly unimpressed. He looked at the guy standing there, almost like he couldn't believe how careless this dude was acting. Two more guys stepped up, weapons ready, and squared off right in front of him. All four of them rolled together as the Zhongshan Four Demons. Looked them over and couldn't help but smirk, thinking they looked rough. He quietly wondered if there was some demonic power going on. Then he grabbed his massive sword, checking out all their different weapons, definitely a wild mix. He slammed the blade straight into the ground, and right away, the ground just blew up with a massive shockwave that spread out everywhere. All four demons got pushed back, each one stumbling a bit. Just stepped up and let everyone know he wanted to see what they could really do. He suddenly jumped forward, catching everyone off guard. The big guy's eyes went wide. He just got his arm guard up in time to block the hit. The other three demons snapped their heads over, totally thrown off. Just popped up out of nowhere like it was nothing. Kept going, landing punch after punch on the big guy, not letting up for a second. The last three guys jumped in to help their teammate. The dude with the axe started freaking out because the enemy was only going after one of them, and the guy with the mace told everyone they needed to get involved right away. The big guy tried to stand his ground, but he was getting hammered non-stop. He was barely hanging on. Every hit coming down on him felt like getting smashed by a massive hammer, each one so heavy it almost knocked him off balance. Suddenly lost his balance and dropped to the side, completely out of it. He just twisted his wrist and sent the attack in a different direction. The tried to dodge but totally wiped out. Just lifted his leg, not even phased, basically showing the guy was nothing to worry about. He slammed his heel right into the guy's face. The hit knocked him straight back, barely giving him time to react. Spun around quick, catching the axe guy rushing at him head on. He dodged under the punch and hit the ground. His arm was buried almost up to his elbow inside the guy's stomach while he twisted around. At the same time, the guy with the sword and the dude with the mace rushed forward together and attacked, not missing a beat. Moved so fast, their hits just missed him every time like he was barely even there. In just a few seconds, he spotted a gap and threw a clean shot right to the guy's ribs, dropping him on the spot. He jumped right in, jumped straight at the swordsman, not hesitating for a second. The guy managed to block the first hit. His sword couldn't handle the pressure and snapped, pushed the busted weapon right up close to his face. He stopped right at the last second, the blade barely touching skin. He just went in and landed a solid kick right to the guy's stomach. The swordsman crashed and rolled hard along the ground. The four demons were sprawled out on the ground, totally out of breath. Stared down at them, realizing right away they were using some wild, forbidden moves, stuff you barely see around here. He eased up, letting his sword drop a bit. Even though he wasn't about to go after younger guys running those kinds of skills, he honestly had no clue what move to make next. He snapped out of his thoughts when someone suddenly yelled out loud. He looked over and saw the big dude on his knees, finally giving up and basically asking for mercy, right next to him. Just stood there frozen, realizing the Zhongshan Four Demons, guys everyone thought were legends, got taken out like it was nothing. The big dude kept talking, saying it was obvious from the start they couldn't win. Just raised an eyebrow, wondering why they kept taking hits when they knew they were outclassed, almost like he was asking if they were into getting hurt or something. The big guy didn't say another word after that. Gave a quick smirk before backing off. He decided to let them go, but he was still going to wreck their energy cores and cut off their meridians. The big guy let out a heavy sigh. He dropped to his knees and touched his forehead to the ground, letting everyone know they were just doing what they were told. He begged him not to take away their chance to keep training and fighting. Called him out for complaining like a kid and wanted to know who their master was. The guy got all flustered and couldn't answer straight, so jumped in sounding annoyed and way too done with it. He pressed him again, saying he just wanted to know who the master was. Pointed out that real demonic energy was basically unheard of around here, and it was obvious from their training that they'd picked it up from someone legit. When they pushed the big guy for more info, he admitted in a kind of awkward way that their master was still around until just last year, but they never even found out what his name was. Couldn't believe what he was hearing. Seriously, how did these guys not even know their own master's name? The guy, clearly freaked out, said they'd been told not to look for other disciples or hang onto any old connections. Couldn't hold back his frustration anymore. He thought if these guys couldn't even figure things out, they should just kept to themselves, messing around with basic skills and staying out of sight, not out here stealing stuff. The big guy tried to explain they weren't out here stealing. All they did was help their brother with his work. Wasn't buying it though. He pointed out that they had to know what their brother was really up to but still decided to back him up. The big guy just looked confused, honestly trying to make understand. They really thought they were doing the right thing, like they were out here saving people. Honestly, that seemed pretty respectable. Just turned his back like he was done with all of it. He told them to leave and stop following that guy around. If they showed up again, things wouldn't end well for them. The four demons hit the ground on their knees, showing their thanks altogether. Walked up to the carriage and went straight to. He basically told him he had to pay up for the four guys, cover the risk to his own life, and even cough up something extra for all the energy and stress just went through. Just mumbled to himself, not really buying the whole mental damage part. Later, as the carriage kept moving, the big guy hung back, remembering what his master always said, people like this weren't the brightest, and you had to be super careful about who you teamed up with. If you ever ran into someone strong and actually decent, you should just stick with them, no questions asked. That thought made him smile too. The carriage came to a stop, leaned forward, wanting answers from the coachman about why they were stopping again. He swung the door open, not really expecting much, just kind of tired. Out of nowhere, the Zhongshan four demons were already down on one knee in the street, calling out for their boss like it was some wild tick moment. The big guy shouted about sticking with the clan for life, saying he'd do whatever it takes and begging to let them join. Just looked at them, not buying it at all. He wondered if they'd gotten knocked senseless from getting beat down, like, who did they think they were calling him boss? The big guy fired back, reminding everyone they weren't even 30 yet, and hoping the boss would look out for them. His face went from doubting hard to straight up stunned. He just froze, totally thrown off, barely able to get his words out. No way, he couldn't wrap his head around the fact that this guy wasn't 30. It honestly didn't add up for him. Later on, while the carriage kept moving through the quiet forest at night, looked down at the floor, barely moving. There were four demons in there. Glanced at one of the guys, kind of surprised they were younger than him, even though he was already 23. He wondered out loud if everyone there had gone through some wild energy burnout or whatever. The dude with the iron club just said that's never happened to them and wanted to know what thought was so weird. Just let out a sigh and told them to just drop it. He just couldn't figure out how guys using dark magic ended up as fighters for these fallen Orthodox families. He wondered if any of that actually added up. Mock, the biggest guy in the group and also the oldest at 21, spoke up first. He said his master always taught him that using demonic arts was just who he was, a way of living, not some club or gang he joined. Right next to him was No Sack, the youngest brother with the iron club. He was only 18, but he was fully backing, hyped, and showing his support. Just let out a sigh. Sure, he got where they were coming from, but in reality, he knew there's no way a regular family would be cool with demonic arts users. They'd just end up in all sorts of drama. The guy with the sword Dong was 20 and clearly not messing around. As soon as he heard the trash talk, he was fired up and let everyone know he'd go all out for. Right next to him, his younger brother, who was 19, jumped in too, basically saying they'd shut down anyone running their mouth. These two weren't about to let anyone disrespect their crew. Just kind of laughed to himself seeing how these guys were rushing in without thinking. It instantly made him think of someone he actually liked. Then he started talking, laying it out pretty clear. If they wanted to join another squad, they had to be ready to do whatever he said, no matter what. Their own choices didn't matter anymore. They basically had to follow orders completely, no questions asked, all for the squad's rep. He wanted to make sure they got the message, and right away, they all answered together. The four demons didn't hesitate. They all showed they were down for this, ready to give it everything they had. Just brushed them off, running his hand through his hair like he couldn't believe what he was seeing. He looked pretty much done, but whatever, they could do their thing. Now they were officially part of the clan as warriors. The four demons cheered again, hyped up and thankful, told them to drop the whole boss thing and just call him young master from now on. The four demons all yelled out together, letting everyone know they got the message loud and clear. It was late at night when they finally pulled up to Du Young's place. The carriage came to a halt, was getting ready to step out. He checked out Du Young's place and thought it looked pretty fancy, wondering if that was actually where he lived. Du Young, looking a bit on edge, said yeah and really wanted Mu Jin to come in. He called out for a servant to get the gate open. When the guy came over and looked confused, Du Young just told him to skip the questions and go set up some food in the annex fast. Cut off whatever was going on and told everyone to drop it. He wanted to know why they were even there and said they should hit up the treasure room before anything else. Du Young nodded and pretty much agreed they should head that direction. While they walked without saying a word, couldn't help but notice how Du Young had been living it up thanks to the cashy scam. Out of nowhere, someone just walked up and stood right in front of them. B blocked their way and looked straight at Brother Do, trying to figure out what was up and if something had gone wrong. Du Young rushed over to Bai Sojin, trying to play it cool, and told him not to worry and just go back inside. But Bai Sojin wasn't having it. He knew Young never kept secrets from him and wanted straight answers about who those people were. Before he could even get his words out, let out a heavy sigh and stopped him right there. Was straight up like, Du Young already told you to bounce, so why are you still here messing around in stuff that's not your business? Just by looking at Beast's outfit, could tell he was probably one of that scammer's guests, and he made it clear that guests shouldn't get involved in family stuff. Went quiet for a second, his eyes getting sharp as he stared ahead. Out of nowhere, he threw his arm out to the side, stopping from getting past. He let him know ice cold that for someone his age talked way too much trash. moved up from the back, ready to handle Bai, but Du Young quickly stopped him, making it clear there was no need. It was all just a mix-up, and these people were actually his guests. He turned around, realized it was, and let him know he'd make the introductions. He pointed out that these guys were Shan's 4 demons, plus the first young master from the clan. Things went quiet for a second after that. Just smirked, almost like he was entertained, and pretty much called out for always having something to say. He threw some shade, saying it made sense since was the wild oldest son from the clan, a so-called proper group, but still hung out with sketchy people and messed with regular folks for fun. Told B that if he was done messing around, he needed to get out of the way since they had stuff to do. B just glanced at, smirked, and basically called him out, saying it was wild to act all righteous while hanging out with people who use shady powers to scare regular folks. He even threw in a jab about how Grandpa would be disappointed if he could see this. B dropped a harsh insult, straight up calling him pathetic trash. The whole room just froze for a second after that, like everyone had to process what they just heard. Du Young started to freak out and tried to jump in, but B Sojin didn't let him. Instead, B Sojin pulled out his sword and made it clear he was taking control. Du Young didn't need to stress about it. B Sojin wasn't the type of guy who'd take an L against those losers. Young's face lit up right after he heard what B said. No Sack, standing in the back, reached for his iron club. He looked done with everything going on. He really wanted the green light to just wreck that guy's face. Reached behind him, pulled out his massive sword and blocked no. He decided to handle things on his own. He quickly launched himself sideways, getting some serious air. He dropped down into an open spot and realized the dog actually knows how to look out for its owner. He locked eyes with B, clearly trying to get under his skin and calling him out like he wanted to start something. His face changed up, his features tightening. He stood there for a bit, taking it all in before he moved. He rushed in, sword ready, and went straight at. Raised his huge sword just in time and stopped the attack. B just wouldn't quit. He kept going wild with his sword, not letting up for a second. Was locked in too, blocking every move like it was nothing. After trading blows for a bit, things started to heat up. Blocked every hit with this confident grin, thinking his moves were quick but didn't really pack a punch. Shifted sword down, guiding it straight toward the ground. B totally didn't see that coming. Didn't waste a second. He raised his massive sword, locked in and got set to swing it hard, aiming straight across with a heavy horizontal slash. Just managed to avoid it, leaning back fast at the last second. Pulled his sword back and went for another swing, trying to keep the pressure on. B was ready, blocking the next attack with his own blade, not letting anything get past him. A few seconds passed and his eyes went wide. He just spotted a crack running down his sword. He couldn't believe it, his weapon was actually messed up. While Dong was chilling with the other 4 demons and Du Young, he watched the fight play out. He figured it was already done. No agreed, thinking that if started to overpower you, there was no coming back from that. He noticed right away that sword looked way stronger than his own iron rod, so he figured something was about to give. Either his weapon would snap or he'd end up getting wrecked. Du Young just stared, totally thrown off by what was going down. His mind was racing, trying to process everything. Then out of nowhere, something else happened. Steel crashed loud across the place, and just like that, B's sword broke clean in half. The busted sword hit the ground, moved ahead with a grin on his face. He swung his sword and landed it flat on B's stomach. Got launched, rolling across the ground before slamming straight into a wall. Not far off, Dong was just chilling with the other 4 demons inside Du Young, watching everything unfold. He wasn't surprised at all, it was pretty much what he figured would happen. The rest of the group just nodded along, all of them on the same page. Glanced over at the group and called out, wanting them to toss him their iron club. No Sack gave a quick nod and handed it over without hesitating. Stood over B, who was trying to push himself off the ground. After a second, raised his iron club, locking eyes with him. He thought about his grandfather, feeling like even now his words still hit hard. Grinned, not holding back, and made up his mind to make pay, wanting everyone, even his grandfather, to hear what was coming next. Looked up, about to say something, but didn't even get the chance. Just started swinging the iron club at him, not holding back at all. He kept telling him to drop his hand, warning that if he didn't, his bones were about to get wrecked. Kept going at B, not holding back at all. He really didn't care if the guy ended up with a few broken bones, especially since he figured they'd both end up in the same coffin as his grandfather anyway. He started cracking up like he'd lost it, and his wild laugh just kept bouncing around in the dark. Third brother watched, clearly worried, thinking the guy was about to stop breathing any second. Yongshu darted in, trying to hold the guy back. He was desperate, just begging for the dude to let it go, promising he'd pay whatever it took to save his friend. Wu Qin looked at him, not really buying it, and wanted to know if he was actually serious. He made it clear, this guy's connected to that heaven-piercing righteous demon. There's no way he can let him die in his own place. He couldn't believe what he was hearing. He was ready to throw down any amount of cash just to save him. Wu Qin just smirked, acting like he was surprised anyone would care that much. It looked like Wu Qin thought he'd already given up on the guy. He grinned, acting like everything was chill. The guy across from him started to freak out a bit, realizing that this dude might actually be crazy. Everyone pushed open the door and headed in together. As soon as the door clicked shut, he glanced around the room, noticing just how much stuff had piled up. Wu Qin checked out the hall, clearly proud of how things turned out. He was ready to get down to business and start counting. The four guys standing behind him, each of them owed 500 taels. Yongshu just froze for a second. He thought he was signing these guys up to be warriors, but things had totally flipped. He kept going, breaking it down. Arms and legs were worth 200 taels, and a life was 300. At the end, he threw in a charge for his brother, who just couldn't keep quiet. 1,000 taels for that. Then, since he felt drained and kind of beat up from everything that happened, he tacked on another 3,000 taels for the energy and guts he lost. He stepped up and made it clear. If anyone wanted to keep things simple, they should just hand over their stuff now. No one seemed ready to argue. Yongshu gritted his teeth, tears streaming down his face. He knew right away. No way was this any better. Honestly, this situation was even rougher than dealing with mountain bandits. Everyone listened up and started moving the gold out. He gave them a quick heads up to stay sharp and not skip over anything. As they kept working, they replied without missing a beat, letting him know they were on it. Out of nowhere, Wu Qin noticed something that pulled him in. He walked over to check out the weird spot. Wu Qin looked around, just checking if anything seemed off. He stared at the wall, trying to figure out what this screen even was. There was something off about it, like it had some weird vibe he couldn't explain. Wu Qin got even more confused, wondering if his mind was playing tricks on him. Meanwhile, Yongshu, a little nervous, tried to figure out if the young master was into the screen. Wu Qin stared at the screen for a bit, kind of weirded out by it, but he kept quiet. He just shook his head, not really into what he was seeing. The guy next to him kept going, explaining that the screen was made by Master Jiang Sushan, and pointed out that Wu Qin had a good eye for things. He pointed out that the young master's room barely had anything in it, and told him he could have it if he wanted. He didn't hesitate and just went for it. The man just watched, thinking the kid was always looking for more. Not long after, people started stacking up gold and silver all over the carriage outside. Wu Qin checked if anyone still needed the carriage. Since nobody did, he just claimed it for himself. Yongshu looked down, kind of respectful, and honestly thought it was a big deal that the young master wanted to use their old ride. Wu Qin gave the signal, ready to get moving. He barely wrapped up when the wheels started turning right away. From a distance, he nodded and threw up a quick goodbye. Wu Qin started walking ahead, telling everyone to take care, and that they'd link up again soon. Yongshu spotted all that cash and just lost it. He started shaking and tears came out. He couldn't believe someone could take so much and still act like it's nothing. He blinked back tears, wondering why things had to go so sideways. He couldn't believe the universe would throw someone this wild into his life, and he just kept asking himself what he did to get stuck with this chaos. The next day rolled around, and everyone was at the Fireflower clan's manor. Moshi just stopped in his tracks, totally caught off guard by what was happening. They bring the gold they just grabbed back into the manor, making sure nobody spots them. He just stared, totally caught off guard, trying to figure out what went down. Mashur couldn't stop thinking about it. He was curious where the young master suddenly got all that cash. Was it from something sketchy? Wu Qin just kept it real and told him no one got hurt. He remembered Mashur talking about being broke, so he went out and made sure they had what they needed. He wondered how old those guys were. Just looking at their size, it was clear they weren't your average dudes. He took a wild guess. If you looked close, everyone there seemed like they were over 40. This kind of news was probably right up their alley. Then, he started wondering where Chief Steward Du and Elder Zhao were at. He hadn't seen them anywhere since he showed up. Mashi remembered that some important guests had just shown up. They were waiting in the front hall and wanted to see the young master. He tensed up right away. More people showing up? He wondered if these were scammers trying to get cash. He tried to chill and hold back. No point in swinging at anybody. Wu Qin was getting annoyed, thinking about what kind of games these old guys were playing now. When he walked in, everyone instantly bowed down together. The young master just pulled up. Botan saw him walk in and gave him a chill welcome, making the young master feel right at home. He got up to introduce everyone. The young master checked out 3 merchants who'd really come through for the Fireflower clan when things got rough. A new guy stepped up and made it clear who he was. He'd heard the whole story about the hidden dragon finally showing up, and yeah, the hype was real. He said his name was Bangguan Wu, rolling with the Yang Merchant Guild. Dong Guanyu stepped up, introducing himself as the guy in charge of the Boundless Commerce Alliance. He looked honestly relieved that the young master was all right. Right after, Huang Duthan, who runs the Golden Treasury Hall, showed up too. It had been a while since anyone had seen him around. He saluted back, but honestly, he didn't think they needed to act so official. He stepped up and said who he was, Hua Wuqin. He let everyone know he appreciated them showing up. People started talking to each other. They chatted for a bit, just chilling and talking like everything was cool. After a bit, he grabbed the teapot and poured himself some tea. Once he was set, he got started. No, 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 no. He didn't waste any time, just straight up called them out about coming for the Fireflower clan's debts. Bong Quan-Wu shook his head, making it clear he wasn't here to hassle anyone about money. He said they just showed up to hype up the young master. If this was a bad time, he was cool with it, and didn't want to cause any trouble. Wu Qian nodded and let them know he appreciated the merchant's help, but he made it clear he wanted to keep things fair. He was still getting his energy back, and wasn't caught up on everything that had happened, so he hoped they'd cut him some slack if he missed anything. He kept going, wanting the exact number the Fireflower clan owed. Before he could get any further, Bo Xin jumped in, saying they needed to lay out the real numbers before talking about paying anything back. Dong Guanyu kept it together and told himself to stay chill. Even though it was kind of annoying, he knew the numbers had to be clear for the young master. He decided to just let them list out the exact amounts. Each group listed their numbers one after the other. The Yang Merchant Guild had 5,300 taels. Golden Treasury Hall counted 3,200, and Boundless Commerce Alliance brought in 1,900. He did the math in his head and figured out it came to 10,400 taels. Nobody said anything, but everyone kept looking at each other, all a bit on edge. A guy started talking, and Bo Xun just slammed his hand down on the table. At that moment, everyone realized the Tsinghua Merchant Guild had been pushing them around for a long time. He kept his cool and just wanted to know what the Tsinghua Merchant Guild was after. Bang Guanwu made it clear. Some people were trying to take over collecting the debts from their families, but that would mess things up for them. He wasn't about to let that slide, so he shut it down right away. Dong Guanyu kept things moving. After the big showdown, Tsinghua Merchant Guild went all in, using their resources to lock down the supply and take over the market. They even ditched their connections with the other merchant groups, making sure nobody else could get in their way. They straight up stole some of the branch leaders too. Just wild. Huan Feng was really caught off guard by all this. He hadn't realized things had gotten this intense. He admitted that they just didn't have it in them to fight back anymore, even if it was embarrassing to say. Guan Yu thought they shouldn't just hand over the power to collect debts without letting the young master know first. Wu Qin nodded, showing he really appreciated them looking out for him. He knew they cared, and honestly, just thinking about everything they'd been through together hit him hard. He just looked down, not really saying much. Back when the Fireflower clan was on top, everyone wanted to be around. But now everyone's dipped, except for Elder Zhao and Chief Steward Du, who are still here. He was honestly grateful that the three stuck around to look out for the family. He slammed his hand down on the table, making some noise. He might not know much about reading or writing, but he knew one thing for sure. When someone does you a solid, you gotta pay them back, no questions asked. He made a promise right then. He'd pay back every single debt the Fireflower clan owed, no hesitation. Nobody could believe it, so they all started asking if that could actually happen. Wu Qin made up his mind right then. He wasn't just going to pay back what he owed. He was set on breaking the merchant associations free from the grip of the Tsinghua Merchant Guild, no matter what it took. They just stood there, totally stuck, like their brains couldn't process what they'd just heard. That promise seriously didn't feel real. Bang Guanwu let out a deep breath and looked over, ready to ask what was on his mind. Hua looked ready to step up and handle things himself. It was clear he wasn't just going to sit back. He was about to take action for everyone. Wu Qin didn't even hesitate to answer. Right away, Boxen stiffened up when he heard young Master Hua's name. He got nervous fast, kind of on edge. He started thinking like, what's this dude even talking about? Does he even realize who's running the show behind those guys? Boxen pointed out it was the Kongdong sect. These guys are basically one of the top dogs when it comes to martial arts. Wu Qin wasn't even fazed. He realized it was just those old guys running things from behind the scenes. He dialed back and reached out to young Master Hua. Guan Yu cut in, letting Chief Steward Du know he had things under control. He stayed calm, letting them know that getting rid of the debt would keep the troublemakers off their backs. That move alone was a huge help, since nobody wanted to mess with Kong Dong-sek face to face. Wu Qin took a sip of his tea, letting himself chill for a second. Yeah, he could totally tell what was up. The dragon's foot just started moving. Everyone was all smiles after that. The group felt way better thanks to the young master's words. They said their goodbyes and dipped, hoping his house would stay winning and his trip would go smooth. He stared as they walked away, honestly impressed. The Tsinghua Merchant Guild was seriously on another level. Wu Qin got things rolling, telling Chief Steward Du to dig up everything on those guys, their cash, their turf, what they're moving, all of it. Then, he told him to hit up the Kong Dong sect. Bo Qin didn't waste any time either and got started with young Master Hua. He wanted to know if Wu Qin was actually serious about setting an alarm. Wu Qin looked tense. He wasn't messing around. He made it clear that if someone had beef, owed something, or needed payback, everything had to be put on the table. Wu Qin was fired up. He couldn't forget what they pulled last time. Letting it slide now would just let them come back even harder. Honestly, it was all or nothing from here. After helping them out for years, now they just turned their backs and won't help him anymore. Wu Qin just grinned. He figured it was about time to clap back for real. Everyone around him probably thought he was just talking nonsense anyway. He stared out, just letting whatever was going to happen. Right then, someone gave an update. Young Master Hua heard the job was done, so he told everyone to meet up. Wu Qin gave a quick nudge, signaling that he should show some respect. The two guys in front weren't just anybody. They were the elder and the chief steward. Both of them looked like they weren't expecting this at all. Turns out they realized the guy in front of them was young Master Hua. He let everyone know that starting now, they were officially martial fighters in the Fireflower clan. The guys everyone knew in the Chengshan area, the ones who always got talked about. They answered with respect, showing some real manners. The four demons from Chengshan were hoping to get on his good side. Both of them just stared, totally caught off guard, as they realized who the other person was. Wu Qin pointed out something, signaling that things were about to get wild. He let everyone know not to get caught off guard just yet. The real surprise was still coming. It was about to hit everyone at once. He kept going, saying they're all younger than him. Everyone just froze for a second, like, what? They just stood there, stunned. It didn't even seem real. No way that actually happened. The four demons from Chengshan headed out to grab something to eat, leaving everyone else just standing there, totally stunned, and not sure how to react with us around. Everyone just froze and looked at him, wondering what he was thinking. Didn't young Master Hua know how wild the four demons of Chengshan were? They couldn't figure out why he'd bring those guys into the clan without even talking to them first. Wu Qin looked at Bo Xin, basically calling him out for trying to sneak off with his two juniors, without even telling him. Bo Xin just froze for a second, not really knowing what to say. He started to stumble over his words, totally caught off guard. He kept his voice flat, barely showing any emotion. In his mind, it was simple. If he gave the signal, everyone stuck around, but if he didn't, they'd all leave. He knew he was the one set to take over the clan, no question about it. Wu Qin had his sights set on getting some cattle, but Mashi wasn't sure since they were basically broke. Mashi thought back for a second. More than 10,000 silver taels had already been dropped just to clear out debts. When they stepped into the secret storeroom, everyone froze for a second, caught off guard all over again. Bo Xin realized that guy had been hiding a ton of stuff. Huan Feng wasn't sure about any of this. Wu Qin just shrugged it off, saying he didn't do anything wild. He just grabbed back what belonged to him. He looked over at the screen and wanted to know what was up. Nobody saw this coming. Wu Qin just called it how it was, straight up. The others said it was some legendary work by Zhang Sushan, and honestly, everyone there just froze for a second. Even the quiet ones were impressed. He mentioned it and even offered to sell for just 90 taels. He was down for it. Bo Xin gave a quick nod, thinking it looked legit. Wu Qin looked over, wondering if he had enough cash for some meat. The other guy just nodded, saying he had plenty. Without wasting any time, Wu Qin gave a quick order and wanted him to go grab it right away. Once they were gone, he looked over at the door. Right away, the door slammed shut and stayed that way. Out of nowhere, the screen started giving off this weird energy. The next morning started early. Everyone gathered outside, nobody missing. Wu Qin looked at him and brought up the early morning call, probably knowing he was curious about why he got dragged out of bed so early. After everything that just happened, he let everyone know it was time for a special training session. He made it clear that sword skills start with the body. If someone's weak, all that training doesn't really matter. Starting today, they're kicking off physical training. He kept his voice flat, making it clear he'd be watching things himself. He told everyone not to dip out in the middle of things. There were heavy bags of rice, each one weighing 144 jin, just sitting by his feet. These weren't just for carrying, they were about to be part of his training squad. He made it clear these weren't snacks, so if anyone tried to take one, that was on them. He shot a look annoyed. Someone was always out here trying to swipe his rice, and it was getting old. Daojin noticed the bags were on the smaller side and wondered what was up with that. Su Yan let him know each one could only hold up to 15 jin. Baorin looked over and wondered what they were supposed to do with all these bags. Wu Qin gave the signal, telling everyone to throw them up on their shoulders. Both of them started freaking out. Young Master Hua realized there was no way he could lift this on his own. It definitely needed two people. He just stared him down, not showing any emotion, and made it clear. Either pick them up now or get ready to lose that armor for good. Wu Qin didn't mess around. He let everyone know that his sword might not look sharp, but if he swung it just once, bones would snap for sure. He made it clear, either grab that rice bag and haul it, or step up and face him in a spar. The four guys dragged themselves over and tossed the heavy rice bags up onto their shoulders, not looking happy about it at all. Wu Qin moved up, eyes locked on Forma, trying to figure out if Forma was actually clowning him or just messing around. He got right up in their faces, not even giving them space. He thought their moves were weak, and he noticed each of them was carrying 3 sacks, like they were trying to sneak by. He started yelling, daring anyone to step up and face him right there. The four guys clenched their jaws, pushing themselves to tough it out. Everyone started shaking, trying hard to hold up the rice sacks. Bo Shun just froze, totally caught off guard. He had no idea what was going on. Huanfeng looked over, trying to figure out what young Master Hua was planning for them. He was impressed. Once he saw the decision was made, he knew things would work out. He let everyone know he had it under control and told them not to doubt themselves. Wu Qin pushed himself harder, knowing he couldn't stop. In his mind, messing up wasn't an option. It was life or death. For him, nothing was truly out of reach. He almost snapped and was about to shout. He jumped right into doing 200 sit-to-stand reps, no breaks, and expected everyone to keep up. They were out of options, so they just yelled together, counting down, 1, 2. Now it was time for them to start the hardcore training. Wu Qin set things up just like he said he would. And honestly, he never messes around. Wu Qin signaled to the younger guys, telling them to keep going. He locked in, bracing his abs and raising his legs, running through the move again, because slacking off wasn't an option if he wanted to stay alive. The oldest brother was sweating like crazy, and honestly, he couldn't figure out what was going on with him. His legs started giving out, like his strength was draining fast. If he couldn't tough it out now, he knew the young master wouldn't hold back. He could actually get beaten to death. He tensed up and flexed hard, putting on a full-on bodybuilder pose. He let out a loud yell, basically doing whatever he could to not get wrecked by Wu Qin. Huanfeng walked out and looked around, totally confused by what he saw. Whatever kind of training was going on, it looked wild. Just watching everyone had him tired out. Nobody knew if those skinny guys could actually handle it. He just stared, still not trusting what he was seeing. The Manhwa clan's young master was out here acting like a total menace, picking on everyone like it was his job. These guys called themselves warriors, but honestly, it looked like all they ever did was blow their cash on food from the Manhwa clan. Now they were complaining about some basic training? That kind of attitude wasn't going to fly. If anyone tried to fake being weak just to get out of it, they weren't making it out. He was out there all day from the moment the sun showed up until it dipped back down. They stood their ground, not moving an inch. He looked straight up, drained, couldn't eat or chill, just counting all the way to 200, his face losing all its color. He dropped to the ground right in front of everyone. Wu Qin just looked at them and shook his head, thinking how weak they were. He thought it was kind of sad. After a whole day of barely breaking a sweat, they were already tired out. In his mind, guys like that had no business talking about chasing martial arts. He decided to call it for the day and wrapped up training right there. 1 second later, he dropped a line that had everyone cringing. From that moment on, he told them they'd be stuck with those rice sacks. He had to eat with everyone, hit the bathroom with the rice sack, drag it around during drills, and even crash with it at night. Wu Qin kept thinking about the rice sack, knowing he'd be stuck with it nonstop. He couldn't help but wonder just how long this was supposed to last. He waits for the signal to drop whatever he's holding, knowing he can't stop until someone gives the word. He called out to his oldest brother, and his brother answered right away. Wu Qin told the crew to grab some ropes and tie everyone up. He made it clear, if anyone messed with the ropes, it would cost them years off their life. No one was about to forget that warning. Even the oldest brother, standing outside, kind of scrunched up his nose. He felt a sting inside, wishing he'd actually met the guy. At that moment, he really missed his mom. A second later, he let Mashi know the plan. From now on, the kids needed beef with every meal. The boy just blinked, taking it in, then nodded. He got it. He didn't need a bath right then, so he just shook his head. He figured he'd talk about it later. Wu Qian walked into the room and just closed the door behind him, not saying anything. He had a secret he really didn't want anyone else finding out. He was seriously wiped out from training with everyone, but he just kept going and never said anything about being tired. Later that night, during the dinner banquet, everyone showed up with rice sacks slung over their shoulders. Even the kids had it rough, hands shaking, legs barely holding them up. They couldn't even figure out how to hold the chopsticks, so getting any food to their mouths was just not happening. The second brother looked wrecked, just staring at his own hands while they shook like he was way older than he really was. He looked over at his fourth brother, thinking how weird it was. He always trained his legs, but now his hands wouldn't stop shaking. The fourth guy frowned, looking uneasy. He'd picked up on something weird earlier, and now he was pretty sure the others felt it too. He'd never had anything like this happen, not even during training with their master. It was the same for him too. The third brother started sweating and almost bailed. The next day rolled around and the grind wasn't over. He was right back at it, pushing through more of that brutal training. He kept counting under his breath, hitting 42, then 43. He wondered why his push-ups weren't looking right. There were still 120 left, and it was about to get real. Everyone froze, staring like they couldn't believe what just happened. Nobody expected them to actually go that far. It was wild. These people were on a whole other level. And then, the next day, it all kicked off again. Wu Qin had everyone doing squats with heavy rice sacks on their shoulders. He joked around, telling them they'd end up waddling like ducks after this workout, and even made them copy his duck noises. They actually went along with it. People walking by just looked at the quacking and kind of felt bad for them. It was honestly pretty sad. The third brother was the loudest one in the group, making a ton of noise. In his head, he was just like, what even is going on right now? The next day, he got everyone together and had them start lifting rice sacks for training. Everyone had to move quick. If anyone slowed down, they'd just end up with another bag to carry. No one wanted to be stuck out there training forever. And they all looked like they were about to sprint to the bathroom any second. The kids still stuck with it, following Wu Qian through training session number 50. He glanced over, kind of surprised. Those kids were actually keeping up way better than he thought they would. He suddenly thought about cranking things up a notch. The idea popped in, and he wondered if it was time to make things a little tougher. After some time, he ended up by the wild stream. Rysak, the oldest brother, had his shoulders strapped up and just stood there looking confused. He kept glancing around, not really sure about this place, or if the young master knew what he was doing. He flashed a sly grin, totally sure the other guy was sweating right now. He told them to go ahead and cross. And they turned their heads and checked out the wild stream in front of them. This thing was massive, way bigger than Mrs. Tan's giant noodle pot, like 1,000 times over. Soyan was hyped. Hearing about a waterfall sounded awesome, but Daojian started getting a little concerned about Soyan rushing in. Out of nowhere, the girl remembered the guy. Wait, does he even know how to swim? Daojian leaned in close, kind of worried. Su Oyan was just standing there, thinking this whole training thing was wild. She started to wonder if they should let him know he actually can't swim. Baixin and Huanfeng showed up right then. They both knew the spot was bad news. The river was moving way too fast, and everyone around had heard stories about how risky it was, even if you weren't hauling gear. Wu Qin just sat there, totally unbothered and not even trying to reply. He thought the older guys were stressing way too hard. since he had already checked things out for himself. Meanwhile, Bai Xin was kind of nervous, stumbling over his words and wondering when Wu Qin started training like that. Wu Qin kept quiet and just looked at everyone, kind of pushing them to decide. Were they really about to cross the river? Or were they about to try him? It was clear he wanted them to think hard before making a move. Wu Qin didn't wait around. He just dropped down right away. While everyone else paused, not sure what to do, he was already moving, taking the lead without looking back. The second brother was clearly on edge, glancing at his oldest brother for answers. Zhang Tai had already made his move, not waiting around for anyone. The eldest brother clenched his jaw, thinking hard. He knew running across the river was way safer than squaring up against the young master, so he decided to go for it too. The oldest brother and the second brother both decided to jump in, so Huanfeng figured he might as well do the same. Huanfeng didn't really get why they were all doing this, though. The others had to pause and rethink everything. This was one of those moments where they just had to stop and go, "Man, what now?" He got ready to go for it, thinking it was now or never. After that, they went right after the second and oldest brothers. Back on the shore, just the third brother and one other guy were left. The whole scene was honestly pretty scary. The second brother pushed the guy in front of him, basically telling him to step up or get out of the way. Soyan just tagged along, looking totally chill. He wasn't stressing. He knew his brother wouldn't actually go off on him. Soyan decided to step up first, which kind of threw Daojian off for a second. He tried to hype himself up, knowing there was no way he could ever say that out loud. After all, he was a warrior from the Manhwa clan. The boy took a deep breath and finally hyped himself up. He took the speed he already had and launched himself up, sticking the landing like it was no big deal. For him, moves like this were light work. He jumped straight into the fast-moving water. That really caught Huanfeng off guard, especially since it was young Master Daojin. Wu Qin took charge, making sure everyone knew he wasn't messing around. He let his juniors know that slipping up here was no joke. One wrong move, and it could be over. He pushed them hard, telling them to keep moving, no breaks, just keep going. While all this was going down, Daojin finally came up to the surface, catching his breath. He kept telling himself he could handle it, trying to get his head in the game. He kept swimming, trusting himself to get through it. He figured he could handle this. No problem. The panic didn't last long. After a second, it just faded away. He slipped right into the big river, and not a single person noticed.
Lately, I've had a strong addiction to watching manhwa and manga recap videos. Every single day, I find myself binging one after another, losing hours and days doing absolutely nothing productive. And honestly, it's getting out of hand. So, maybe we can make these viral videos too. I mean, look at the views, the growth, the community these creators are building. It looks simple, right? But that's a trap. You go down this endless rabbit hole, spending money, losing sleep, hiring editors and writers from Fiverr and Upwork, and still feel like you've been robbed. Because don't forget how emotional the YouTube algorithm can be with making videos go viral. It's unpredictable, especially when the market's saturated, competition's relentless, and somehow other creators are dropping 10-hour videos daily while you're stuck trying to finish one. That's when I realized something had to change. So, I built the solution, the Webtoon Narrative Suite, a complete one-click system that handles everything from cropping, script narration, text-to-speech, image processing, and full video generation in one smooth process. Save money, reduce hours of work, and have a tool that only gives you straight results. Click on the link down below and experience it for yourself. And if you want even more tools to supercharge your YouTube recap journey, visit my Ko-Fi and Patreon pages where I drop weekly new tools designed to keep you ahead as AI continues to steal our jobs. So tap in now before you get left behind.